Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Can anybody hear me in the chat? Can anybody hear me in the chat? Okay, Miss Archie, how are you doing? Good evening to you. Anti-gravity, what's up, bro? Um, yeah, so open chat number 6. We got a good response from the last open chat that we had Thursday night, which was unexpected. I only intended for that to be 2 hours or something like that, and it turned out to be a 5-hour hangout. So good response. People were enthusiastic about it. Got a lot of positive feedback about it. So back at it again, man. Just try to you know decouple ourselves, from all this technology talk and geopolitical talk, and try to have a somewhat open conversation. Anybody wants to get on the panel, man, they can get on the panel and come through. Make sure you hit the like button for you come on to the panel. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about as long as it's politically safe. We don't want to get the channel flagged over some nefarious things. So today, man, I don't really have a whole lot to talk about. This is only gonna go for a few hours before we go to Black Tech Talk tonight, man. Digital health and cybersecurity. So Miss Archie says buy the dips, Bitcoin. Kareem Austin, what's going on? Gears, what's going on? Yeah, so this is only gonna go for a few hours before we get to the Black Tech Talk for tonight. Digital health and cybersecurity. Hoping that Dr. Phoenix comes through. Maybe Gabe might come through. I'm hoping that Mike from Austin comes through. We can chop up some serious game on that hangout. And I'm feeling a bit under the weather as well. Allergies are killing me. Excessive heat today, heat wave. Got up to about 90, 93, 94 degrees today in Boston, man. It was that's insane. Too much, all that heat with all that pollution is a killer. So, but yeah, it's been an eventful week. Just for the Manosphere in particular, just a whole lot of things were revealed the last 24 hours that really made everybody raise their eyebrows as to what's going on. People doxing people and getting into in-person altercations and pulling up on people. Man, we're just not about that sort of lifestyle on the Black Brain Trust. Man, we strive for elevation, and building on knowledge and intellectualism and wisdom, esoteric sciences and things of that nature. I think what happens in the Manosphere is that people take things too far from what it should be. They talk about meeting people in parking lots and airports and stuff like that. It's unnecessary to have that sort of aggression towards somebody behind a computer. Me personally, man, I'm all about the brain trust, man. All about just everything tech, everything geopolitics, economics, man. Cars, racing, things that guys do. And not that we're excluding women from the discussion, but the Manosphere originally was supposed to be a safe space for thinking Black men, and what has happened is that the unintelligent people have come into the Manosphere and just kind of stomped all over it, and have basically put their feet up on the couch after stepping in mud. And, you get what you get out of it. Raining Woman, how are you doing, dear? And shout out to Raining Woman, man. She's always, dedicated to the Black Brain Trust and promoting it and the advancement of it. Seeing brothers do well for themselves. And she's been a large contributor to the promotion the channel, the last probably month and a half or so, if not longer. We did a interview with her on her channel. So make sure you check out Raining Woman's channel. Hopefully it's back up and running, by Monday or so. God willing, she can get back on her grind. She's just been instrumental in advancing the channel from a female contributor's perspective. We can't really knock her. She has the SapioSexual Lounge, which is it's a dope series that you all should check out. It's about for those of you who don't understand what a sapiosexual is, and this is mostly towards women. Sapiosexuals are women who find intelligence sexually appealing and arousing, what they find on the opposite sex, right? So they find that to be appealing, and in the Black community, that's very rare. At least in my experience, it's very rare to find sapiosexuals, but they do exist, and women can sit there and just listen to brothers just talk all day long, and I've heard women tell me, man, they can they get wet just hearing brothers just talk, really geeky stuff, really intellectual stuff. They want to see the best of brothers, man. They don't want to see brothers fighting out there, and I'll meet you in the parking lot and I'll pull up here and all that other stuff, man. They not about that life like that. They're not into all that stuff, man. What moves them is not so much about the physical, about a brother, right? So they look at a man, a Black man, and see what's his intellectual game like. What does he know? If she knows more than him, she's not going to be attracted to him. That's just the bottom line. She don't want some dude whose IQ is less than hers. What they want is brothers who strive for more. And these tend to be your nerds, your socially awkward men, so to speak. A lot of people always talk about certain Black men in the Manosphere are intellectuals, and I go to their channel and I listen to them, and I'm like, that's intellectualism? That's crazy. So yeah, that's what a sapiosexual is, man. And she being Raining Woman has a series called SapioSexual Lounge, man. I can't wait till her channel gets up and going before they stop doing live streams on YouTube. Yeah, so yeah, Raining Woman has that series going, man. And God willing, she gets her channel back in the next few days, and she can get back to doing business, man. And we need more of that, right? We need more of that in the Manosphere. There should be a sapiosexual channel just dedicated for Black women who find that type of stuff attractive in men, and be more, um, be more forthcoming with their intentions. Like, just put it all out there. Cocaine Kel says, I said I was a sapiosexual on the panel the other day, and they thought it was a part of the LGBTQ community. It's hilarious. A lot of Black people don't know about that. They don't really know about that. And some guys don't understand it either, right? So a, a lot of a lot of Black men focus on their physical appearance and don't focus on the intellectual part. System might be turned off by them. Yeah, you got a nice flashy car and all this other stuff, but what's going on in your brain? And a lot of guys, they don't want to admit that they have literacy issues. They can't read, or they can only read so much. They have ADD issues. So they didn't take the time to really do all of the work necessary to build up their intellectual capacity. And a female can, a woman who's a sapiosexual can spot that on the guy right away. This guy's not the business. And usually you find these guys doing menial work, bagging groceries and doing Uber and Lyft and stuff like that. They're usually not all that all that upwardly mobile, if that makes any sense. But I think physical looks still matter. I think that you still have to have straight teeth. You still have to have, a pink tongue. Just a lot of times, guys walk around with these white tongues, man, and it's like that's so full of bacteria. And I know Dr. Phoenix can probably speak to something like this, man. How much bacteria is on his tongue, man. You have to have some form of physical appearance to you, right? You can't just be walking around like like ET or something. That's not always going to be the business. So Brooklyn Star said people don't read, period. It is true in the black community. That is true. That is very true. But yeah, that's what sapiosexualism is, man. Which is derived from the word sapient. Sapient means to be means wisdom or intelligence or knowledge. Women who are sapiosexuals find that very, very much appealing in men, and they tend to be less active on things like Tinder, things like Match, and Coffee Meets Bagel, whatever those sort of apps are. They're not really into that type of stuff, man. They may end up at certain events like Black Tech Fest or some of these tech conferences, South by Southwest. They're all up in those areas, and they're they're paying attention. They're scanning the room and they listen to who's talking, which brother's talking. If he's available, they're pulling up on him. They're giving out the business card. They're having a conversation. Trying to figure out where his head is, because that's more important than anything else. Everything you can make up the other things. You can always go to the gym, get your body up. You can always, build up a business or something like that to get your money up. To become more upwardly mobile. But the intellectual capacity has to be there. If it's not there, it ain't gonna work, bro. So yeah, that's the skinny on sapiosexualism, and make sure y'all go over there and subscribe to Raining Woman. Yeah, sapiosexuals getting wet off of hearing guys talk. That's definitely a little kink that they have. Who's on the panel with me? My bro. What's going on, MOT?
What's going on, man?
Chilling, bro. What's the word?
Chilling out.
Anything you want to put up?
Yeah. I got a question, man, about along the lines of what you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm still in Chicago. We was at this benefit last night, and there was this guy, man, who just, like, when you go to these benefits and you sit at the table,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know what you're talking about, it's okay just to be quiet and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
It's always okay to be quiet and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to be in these type of environments, man, you got to be abreast of what's going on in the news and all that type of stuff, because that's what they're going to be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to call on you at some point, make sure you got something to say that makes sense.
Yep, definitely. I agree with that 100%. I think a lot of guys, like I was saying before, I think a lot of guys just don't, they don't actually study up. I mean, you MOT, you're pretty well versed in many areas. So for you, it might be easy for you, but there's a lot of guys who just did not take the time to do the necessary work. When I was in undergrad, man, I saw it day in and day out, or semester through semester, man. Guys come through because they got promised by the recruiters. Oh yeah, you're gonna make $100,000 in IT and this and that, and they signed up for the courses and everything else, but they didn't have the tenacity to actually to be sustainable in during the undergrad. So yeah, there was some females there too, but once they heard you speak and you didn't know what you was talking about, you got 86, man. That was it. And instead of, like you were saying, absorbing the knowledge that's there, that's what we created this channel for, was for guys to come through and actually get that knowledge, so that you can go out there and actually have that conversation. Because you're not, you got to be in this environment and in this economy, you got to have worldly knowledge on multiple markets and geopolitics. You got to be versed in these areas. If you're not, it's going to set you apart from the rest of the guys that's in the room. And when people call on you, like you said, MOT, You're gonna have to answer.
Yeah, and they don't understand that they don't have a high opinion of most black guys anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So if you add to their thought process by not being able to know how to handle yourself in public, or trying to call yourself, trying to holler at somebody's girl because it ain't the event for that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's just that you got to be able to know how to handle yourself in public, man. And you have to understand that a level of precision is a way that you got to learn how to operate out here.
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, it is going to come back and bite you every single time, whether you think it is or where you're not.
Yeah, because a lot of guys focus on game. Game doesn't work with sapiosexual women. That just does not work. You can't run game on a sapiosexual woman. That makes her dry down there. You want to make a sapiosexual woman wet? Start talking about, space exploration. Start talking about cryptocurrencies. Start talking about, the logistics and supply chain aspects of trucking.
Yeah.
Start talking about those things. When you can hold a conversation like that and you can command the room, trust me, she's soaked between her legs. That's just what it is.
And here's the other thing. As beautiful as those women are, man, they're smart as shit in whatever field that they're in. You don't get to come in that room unless you are a top person in whatever field that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is she looking, let's say if she was looking, look at somebody who can have the conversation and she can bring out with her. Like, that's the other part. Now, you can work on all this other stuff, but the being able to take you around and not being embarrassed by your presence is very huge in those particular market spaces.
Right, because you're a rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, because you're a minority in that group. They're going to want to suss out if you know what you're talking about or not very quickly. You have people who come up to you and try those little games with you just like that, you know?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I agree with you what you're saying, MOT, and we have to strive for better, man. You just can't come with the fashion. You can't just come with the fancy wheels on the car and think that that's going to work. These pickup artist sort of tactics that you hear in the manosphere and even outside of the manosphere, that ain't the business. You spend all that money trying to get game from this guy, and you try to step to this girl who works at IBM or Microsoft or something like that, and you don't realize she already sized you up, and you about to get cold rejected because you listen to these guys. They sold you a book. You read the book. You sat in the mirror for all that time. You tried to rehearse all of these lines, and you tried to approach the wrong woman with that, wrong sister with that, and next thing you know, she's not calling you back or she's not responding to your text messages because she's not interested in that. You already canceled yourself out of the game. So
yeah, I mean, but the other thing is that you got to consider the source. If that person already isn't in those circles, that book isn't going to get you in those circles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're listening to stuff for superficial reasons, it's going to work on people, and it's not going to really work nowhere near outside of that pretty much that framework.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to understand that universal appeal is a very hard thing, very time consuming, but you can't take the universal appeal and just plop it down in every single environment, man. I mean, me personally, I don't want black dudes looking like that or black women looking like that. You know, it isn't some, well, you're making me look bad thing. I'm like, man, look, you could be messing it up in the next 20 possible black candidates that person could be hiring at the company.
Right.
So just stay home if you don't know what you're doing, man.
Or study up.
Yes. And it's really not that hard. All you got to do is pick an area and just keep up with it. There's tons of Google alerts and everything else you can use for everything.
Yep. I go. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that I go to meetup events every week. I go to Eventbrite events every week. I'm out there, really putting in the time necessary to really network and really talk to people. And that's how I get connected on LinkedIn and things like that, get, a lot of job opportunities and stuff like that. Very rarely do I ever have to apply for a job. If I want a raise, I just go to another, job or something like that, so, because I had I had the networking capabilities as well as the knowledge, general knowledge. Like, you don't have to be an expert in everything. You just need to have be a general practitioner, if that makes any sense.
And guess what? You already talked to these people before the HR people even got a hold of your resume. So your stuff's gonna get pulled to the side. Right? And like, people don't understand how important Eventbrite and Meetup is, how important that is right now, especially in a job market where you could be easily locked out of it for a long time if you don't know anybody. You got to keep that work up, man. It's like any other workout. You got to be able to work that out too, because them contacts are huge, and they always gonna be.
Yep. I'm sorry. Did I blow my nose and people heard me?
No, I didn't hear anything.
Oh, okay. Dr. Phoenix, you're on. What's going on, bro?
What's going on, brother? Good evening to Man of Tomorrow. First time I've been on the panel, but been a long time fan of yours, brother. Since I heard the interview you did when I first came across the Black Manosphere earlier this year. I heard an interview you did a while ago with O'Shea Duke Jackson, and you was telling this crazy story about this brother you helped out in was it Colorado, Denver, or something like that. It was kind of a real crazy story. I was like, oh yeah, because I knew a bunch.
Happens all the time. A lot of people don't understand that you as an up-and-coming black dude, there's a lot of people who's going to wear down your defenses so you can be, quote-unquote, chose by somebody who's going to keep your ass at the bottom. You got to really stop black men from falling into those type of traps, because they happen way too often.
Yeah, I agree. I said this before on previous panels with Mike V and crew. That I have two young brothers that are 18 that I mentor, and I teach them the same thing. But to go to two things. One, what Mike V talked about earlier about the bacteria on your tongue is actually called thrush, and is actually an overgrowth of yeast. Is actually yeast on the tongue. So for people who typically you'll see this for a lot of people who are in the hospital in ICUs, they've been, they don't, they might be ventilated. And so basically it's just the overgrowth of bacteria. It's common if you're if you have to stay in a hospital for an extended period of time, pretty common, because obviously you're not brushing your teeth per se like that. But yeah, so this is just part of, if you're in a hospital, this is just part of daily care of a patient, that you have to give them some type of antiseptic rinse to help clean their mouth out and stuff like that. But it's also a sign of sort of an unhealthy gut biome, because typically that occurs when you have an overgrowth of candida. Candida is just another name for yeast. And so typically you'll see that in folks who have yeast overgrowth, and also, and typically you also see folks who have that, they also might have skin issues like psoriasis, stuff like that. But yeah, and to what Man of Tomorrow said about when he was in Chicago. I'm from Chicago, brother, and I'll tell you this much: there's a very good reason why Chicago for the last 4 or 5 years has had a negative black population growth. If anyone's not familiar, for the last about 4 or 5 years or so, the population of Chicago has been shrinking, but specifically the black population. And part of that is because actually, I was saying most of it is because exactly of what Man of Tomorrow observed at the event. You got a lot of Negroes in Chicago that, okay, I'll just put it on the table. You got a lot of low IQ Negroes. I said it. It needs to be said. And when you get around a lot of these cats, they get to talking and pontificating, about nothing. Oftentimes, they just end up changing the entire conversation altogether. And so, yeah, I grew up in Chicago, so I know exactly how those cats in Chicago get down. You got a lot of dudes with It's not even just ADD. You got ADHD going on, and I actually I know how some of the folks in the chat might feel about Umar Johnson, but I think he had the best definition of ADHD. Ain't no daddy at home disorder. That's what he calls it, and I couldn't agree more. You got a lot of dudes with some psychosocial, neuropsychiatric issues, and is on display every moment of every day.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I haven't been to Chicago myself, but I got an idea of an experience with same thing here in Boston. So I do see a lot of guys who just want to monopolize floor time in terms of talking. You know, they don't really have anything to really bring to the conversation. They just want to talk so they can be heard. You know, instead of having something to say, they just want to say something. You see that in the Manosphere as well. People getting on panels and just talking and just to be talking. It's like they're going way off topic and they don't really know what they're talking about. A sapiosexual woman will pick up on that vibe really quick. You know, they're very perceptive about men in terms of intellectualism. They, you know, it's a big turn off for them to have low IQ, low cultural intelligence as well.
I would agree. I mean, Chicago is one of those places you can completely grow up and never interact with another group of people ever. I mean, Chicago is a big city. So you can grow up on the south side or the west side of Chicago, which is where typically most black folks tend to be at in Chicago, minus the black immigrant population. But if you're ADOS, typically you're either on the south side or the west side of the city. And again, you can grow up on those, in those parts of town, and you will never leave your neighborhood. You will never venture out there. And for me, I left Chicago after my first year at U of I. And part of the reason, going back to what MOT talked about, that you're seeing what you're seeing is that, I don't know if people are familiar, but Chicago, for the most part, is pretty much the tech health center of the Midwest for the most part. When you look at the Great Lakes region especially, Chicago is what they call the black hole, because it tends to suck all the talent from the surrounding areas into it. And again, because you have some top tier universities and health systems, and it's a major hub for economics, architecture, tech. You have Abbott Labs, which is right outside of Chicago, borders Wisconsin and Illinois. It's right outside of. And again, they have a massive campus right outside of the Chicago area. And like I said before, they suck in everybody. And typically what you find in like some of the surrounding states like Indiana, Iowa, Wisconsin, even Minnesota, a lot of them tend to be folks who came from Chicago who, quite frankly, just couldn't cut it in Chicago. Again, Chicago is a city of it's always been a violent city. I mean, even since its inception, but also at the same time, it's also been a city of just old money. And it also was the birthplace of modern day economic policy, which came out of University of Illinois. And so there's there's a very good reason that the black population of Chicago is shrinking, but the city is becoming more affluent. You go on Michigan Avenue, and I was down there. I was in Chicago maybe not even quite a year ago, back in November of last year, and I was actually doing some stuff. I was being interviewed with some medical schools, and I was in downtown Chicago. And the interesting thing was that there were no black folks down there. This was like November. It was like one of these really super nice days in November. It was like 70 some degrees, and there were probably more cops in downtown Chicago than you probably saw black people downtown Chicago. In fact, not only that, there was nothing but trust fund babies rolling around in their brand new Lamborghinis and Ferraris. I mean, this is like middle of November in Chicago. And so, again, Chicago is one of those places too that's one of the most racially balkanized cities in the country. I mean, very racially balkanized. But again, part of that is that, you got folks that they just never ventured outside those neighborhoods in Chicago. I mean, the major neighborhoods in Chicago, like Chatham, Inglewood, West Lawn, Lawndale, Garfield Park, the Alston area, which is on the west side, So I mean, you have these areas that typically Black folks have been sort of corralled into, and specifically like the area I grew up in, it was a pretty solidly middle class area. But last time I went through there, it was kind of crazy. And I did want to touch on something about what you was talking about earlier about the sapiosexual. I think this also needs to be said. It is just an audacious thought in modern Black society to think of a Black man as an intellectual. It really is an audacious thought. It's like, how dare you be an intellectual as a Black man? And again, you see this play out every single day on in the Black YouTube sector. And earlier today I was listening to Obsidian, and there was a woman on there, and she was a nurse, and she was talking some crazy stuff. I'm looking like, are you serious?
How did she get into nursing school talking like
that? There's ways to get in nursing school.
Oh yeah.
I mean, typically most Black folks, if they go into nursing, most Black people tend to get in at the community college level.
Community college,
truth be told, it's damn near as hard to get into the baccalaureate, which is where I started nursing at. Mm-hmm. I got into a baccalaureate program, one, because I used to be a medic in the Army, but also two, you just have to compete. I mean, again, at that level, you're dealing with nothing but whites and Asians and whoever other groups of people. It's just hella competitive at the baccalaureate level. Community college level is not as competitive, and you don't learn quite the same things. You learn the basics. You learn pretty much how to be a task-oriented nurse, but you don't learn none of the theory, none of the academic stuff, none of the underlying stuff. Specifically like when I did my baccalaureate program, we did public health rotations. We had whole rotations devoted to maternity and obstetrics and such like that, high risk obstetrics to be exact. So you don't typically get that at the community college level, because again, it's more task oriented. It's just more designed to get you into the field, and then you kind of continue on. Because if you ask anybody that's ever started an ADM program, for them to get a BSN, they got to go do typically another 18 to 24 months to get a BSN, even though it probably took them about 3 to 4 years just to complete that ADM. So those programs are hyper competitive, and you see acceptance rates for Black folks pretty much on the same level as you would for medical school. But again, we're talking about careers where you can walk out of there, on the low end, you probably gonna be making 60, and on the high end, you'll be making somewhere in the 80s. I mean, depending on where you go and what you do.
And I was gonna say, you could probably even speak to this more. My wife gives me these stories all the time, right, about the nurses that went through a bachelor's program versus that of going through a community college program. That there is even different politics within the hospital as it concerns, I guess, capabilities, the efficiency, the adequacy, and even that of the attitude of the nurses that have went through the different programs. So
yeah, and again, you see this stratification of nursing. And like I said, typically most Black folks' experiences dealing with Black nurses, you probably dealt with some damn hood rat that she got lucky enough to get into nursing school at some damn community college, and that's pretty much all she did. But for example, if you're in a clinical setting, you can't be a nurse manager if you don't have at the minimum a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those jobs typically are paying you, depending on what system you're at, where you're at. I mean, those jobs are typically paying you anywhere from 100 to, I've seen it as high as 180 grand a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally have gotten offers to do that stuff, and I'm not even nowhere near. I don't even have nowhere near the kind of experience you need. But again, you get that offer simply by virtue of you having a bachelor's degree. And one thing, like the two brothers that I'm mentoring that are 18, they got scholarships at private universities here in Wisconsin, but they also they're looking to get into the nursing program as well. And one of the things I tell them about, in the world of nursing, the bachelor's degree is the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yes,
you can do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't even need to take the GRE if you have a bachelor's degree, and you got the minimum of a 3.3 GPA coming out of nursing school. You don't even need to take the GRE to go apply to graduate school. You can apply directly to graduate school. But again,
my mother is a nursing supervisor, and for a RIM, Rehabilitation Institute of Michigan, So she's a nursing supervisor for several of those floors, and really to even get in that position, she had to have a master's, just to be competitive against those individuals who have, similar years of experience. And my wife, just like you mentioned, like not having to take the GRE because she had her bachelor's, because she had above that grade point average, she didn't even have to take the GRE for most of the universities that she applied to for her master's for nurse anesthetist program. So yeah. The bachelor's is, like you said, the way to go, especially in the nursing field.
Again, and like I said, and typically when you're dealing with these folks, it's I'm not saying Black folks aren't intelligent in that regard. It's just that it's a whole new ball game when you step into the baccalaureate world. At these 4-year universities, these colleges and universities, it's just a different level of competition that Black folks just aren't ready for.
Right.
And again, in the world of nursing specifically, there are just so many things you can do, but you have to have a bachelor's degree. And given the portal of entry, most Black folks get into the profession. And truth be told, most Black folks don't even bother going beyond getting associate degrees. And the only reason they're doing it now is because the hospitals are forcing them to do it. You're basically, you either, when you first come on as a new nurse, you get a contract because you're mandated to work minimum 36 hours a week. If you're
what's wild is that the hospitals will pay for them to go beyond that associate's degree, but a lot of them just choose to not go further.
Well, a lot of them also.
It's not even that. They will pay for you to get doctoral degrees. If you're a smart person, you can do nursing and never go a lick in debt.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. You were saying something?
Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. I just need to throw that in there because a lot of folks, they'll tell you some crazy crap about why they never bothered becoming MP. They've been a CNA for like 20 some damn years, and I see this all the damn time. And there's Black females every single time. Them been a damn CNA for like 30. I met one that was a CNA for like 35 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. That's how they usually start off, right? So they get offered, these paid programs at the Red Cross to be CNA, and then they go from being a CNA to some form of other associate's degree in nursing, and then from a associate's degree in nursing, they try to get into a baccalaureate, and then they see the uphill battle, so they turn back around. They try
right back around.
Yep. Yeah, it's a very people think it's not an easy program to complete. I've told you before. I've said this before. The only folks that failed out of my program were the Black students. That's it. Nobody else failed. It was only the Black students that failed. But one thing I did want to point out, speaking of that, you can't even join the nursing corps in the military if you don't have a bachelor's degree. They do not accept associate degree nurses in the military.
The military is getting to the point where they don't accept anything without a bachelor's degree. It's going to get to that point.
Because why? Because at the beginning of the Iraq War, I can tell you this from personal experience when I got recruited. I remember, man, my recruiter, this dude was getting dudes off. You had a whole bunch of dudes. He was getting off all kinds of charges. Dudes getting caught up on. This was, like I said, this was back in the early mid 2000s, and back then, man, they would just let anybody in. That's why they started kicking folks out like around 2000, 2007, 2008. Why? Because they just you let in all these low IQ folks that couldn't make the cut. A lot of these dudes had behavioral issues. Many of them had records, and the judges pretty much gave them two choices: either you take your ass to the Army or whatever branch, because the Air Force don't accept people who don't have at the minimum a high school diploma.
I think they had to bring me in to actually. I'm on military installations overseas, trying to teach these people not to gangbang in the goddamn dorms.
Wow.
I had to pay to go teach people that shit. I'm serious. I'm not lying.
I believe
Italy, Germany, and like France and England. I'm like, you need me to do what? So, making sure you look at a contract like, okay, we need a person. And I'm like, what does this even mean? They're like, basically, we need somebody to talk to the minorities about how not to destroy everything around. I'm like, oh shit, wow,
dude. Yep. I'll tell you how bad it was when I was in. When I got recruited, one of the recruits, she got knocked up. So basically, I was the only. He had like 4 recruits lined up at the time. at the time I had met my recruiter when I was still at U of I, and I remember one of them was this Puerto Rican chick. She got knocked up. Then he had these two other cats he was trying to get in. These dudes got caught up on some dumb shit. Basically, I was the only one that ended up. He actually had a successful, he successfully recruited, and part of it was because I just said whatever it is. But I remember when I went to go take the ASVAB, he didn't think I was gonna score that well. He didn't think I was gonna score high until he saw my ASVAB scores. And I remember when I was at the MEP station in Chicago, was in Des Plaines, but I was at the MEP station and they got my scores back. And I remember when the Air Force recruits came up, he said, "Look, if you don't want them, we'll take them." But I mean, they offered me, so I ended up becoming a medic because that's ultimately what I picked. But that wasn't the first job they offered. They offered me stuff more in the tech engineering field because I score pretty well in that regard. But you have to have a minimum score, for example, in the military. But they were giving waivers on shit. They were giving you had cats walking in there with GT scores of like in the 50s. I mean, and of course they just make you a cook or infantry or some crap like that. But yeah, I mean, we had cats when I was in, man, cats were getting kicked out. Cats were getting reclassified. They were getting downgraded in MOSs. It was just all kinds of crazy crap.
So, Gabe, what's your experience with SapioSexual's?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Just want to say hey to the panel before I jump in to the subject. My bad. I just started jumping in there.
What's up, brother?
But I haven't had much. So I guess maybe I've had more of indirect experience with ladies who are more sapiosexual. It's like, so let me describe the scenario, right? There'll be times where I might go into an environment where, so in Detroit, it's a spot called called Sweet Potato Sensations, where everything is made from sweet potatoes. So you got sweet potato pies, sweet potato ice cream, sweet potato cookies, sweet potato cheesecake, and it's owned by a black, some black young ladies. They're like entrepreneurs. They own it with their mother. So like every once in a while, every Saturday night or so, they'll have like a discussion topic, and then everybody will pretty much come to the spot, and then we'll all be kind of like in a circle talking about some things that are happening within the community, things that are happening in the world. It doesn't matter on what the topic is. A lot of times it will be relationship stuff too. So I will come in, everybody's kind of talking, but all of a sudden it gets to something a little bit more technical, something that requires someone who's a little bit more well-read than what just comes from social media or what comes from, any of those very popular outlets. And then I might speak on it because I might have some experience in there. And all of a sudden you see some heads. And then all of a sudden, like the young ladies, they're starting to look at you a little more after you kind of getting more into the subject matter. So that's what I kind of mean, having that somewhat of an indirect sapiosexual experience. Once you start talking like you really have read a book before, there's some young ladies or just older ladies in general too that'll start to give you a bit more attention, even after you're not talking. They might look to you to speak or kind of give you the eye or whatever, or kind of, even come up to you after the discussion and ask, "Hey, where you from? I haven't seen you around." Like, we'll actually approach you. So I've been in several of those type of situations before, just based upon just conversation about things that kind of exposes the fact that I might have read a book or two before. So yeah.
You have to be confident about what you know, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So once you're confident about what you know, you can actually command the room, which is what I was saying earlier. So the ability to command the room about what you know is actually very appealing to a sapiosexual woman. Cocaine Kells and Raining Woman in the chat have co-signed that just now, or at least earlier. So that's actually important, more important than what most people think.
I guess my general experience dealing with sapiosexuals, I guess even in undergrad, I typically find even dealing with Black women at the undergrad level, you would think that they would be more attracted to that, but in reality, they're not. What tends to happen, I saw this happen all the time. I met women. They would still go back to the hood and mess with cats in the hood, mess with the street dudes. I mean, I see it all the time. I was seeing it all the time. I remember actually not even remember. I actually my girl, she was telling me about one of the girls in her program. She, she's a grad student, but she's running back messing with dudes in the hood.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it here.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's common. I wouldn't say it's common. Yeah.
I've seen women with PhDs, get their get suspended from the bar because they out there messing with criminals. You got a degree in criminal justice, but you out there messing with criminals. And I think somebody has pointed this out before, that it's a self-esteem issue for a lot of sisters because they don't know what to do with a brother who's upwardly mobile.
Yeah, that's a biggie. I've experienced that a lot too. Like I've talked to young ladies who feel smaller because I have ambitions. They feel less of themselves, I guess, because I'm doing more than them, I guess, just in life in general. So I've been in those situations too, where they can get with a dude who really don't got too much going on, and then the young lady becomes the center of their world, right? But if I got stuff going on, like she can't, like even my wife recognizes, like, hey, this is a busy dude. Like he's always involved in something. He's always on something. I can't really take all of his time and attention, and I'm not the center of his universe. So, I think that's also part of it, right? Ladies desiring that. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, ladies desire attention. You got, and some more than others,
Well, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I also will say something, and I've heard MOT talk about this. He calls them reptiles, and I think that's funny. But one thing,
yeah.
Well, one thing I will say is that I think in most respects, when you're an intelligent, thoughtful, brother, and you can articulate yourself well, and you have a global knowledge base, it's very intimidating to women. Even because I've seen this with women that had MDs that, they talk to me, and you can clearly see it. They get uncomfortable with the idea that, this dude know more than me, and you see this a lot in Black society. When you see them get around brothers that actually know something, they tend to get intimidated. And this goes to something I was seeing the brother Rael in the chat talking about. He in college, man, I had Black girls when I was in my nursing program. They would call me up asking me to help them in all kinds of stuff, want to be their partners and research projects and stuff. And I saw this. I would get this wholesale again. I went back to undergrad a little when I was a little older. But again, you see that. But here's the thing: when I got around those non-Black females, and I hate to put this out there, I got nothing but love. The white chicks, they all up in my face. They want to hear me. I'm going to research conferences. They all in my grill. Black girls, they'll come only after the white women are in my face and they're talking to me. Like, oh, please tell me more about what you're doing.
Right.
Then they show some interest.
Yeah, somebody had to validate you. In terms of your capacity, what you're bringing to the table. And it's unfortunate because I've said this before, that I've seen sisters walk past good brothers, man. And good brother means sapiosexual, right? He's intellectual. He's worldly, knowledgeable, and has himself together. But sisters walk right past him. Like he's invisible. He's a ghost to them. So it's a shame.
I mean, that's why I just found it better to just date women within those environments where you're trying to be. And when you go to those conferences, that's an excellent place to talk to people who's going to be on your level someday. So it's better off just finding them in those environments than trying to bring their understanding of you up along the way, in most cases.
Yeah, absolutely. MOT, what's your experience with SapioSexual's? Or do you even have any idea what a sapiosexual is?
Oh, yeah. I mean, women who are turned on by intelligence and competence, too, on the subject matter. I mean, like I said, when you go to these private dinners and these conferences, there are women there who like being around competent men, believe it or not. That's why they're there. They're interested in a certain type of subject. They know a lot about it. They really don't talk as much, but as soon as you come to them and talk to them about the particular subject, boom, you see what her actual knowledge base actually is. But she really don't have that conversation up front. She wait for you to kind of tease out the knowledge in her, try to get to see where you are on a particular path before she even approaches. So that's been my experience in these environments anyway.
Yeah, and it's definitely the environment plays a role as well. So you go to these meetups, these Eventbrite events, and that event, that meetup is going to determine who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. The women who can't hold a candle or have no interest in sapiosexualism, then they get weeded out really fast, man. And there's not enough events available for Black people to actually meet on that level. Everything's always superficial, right? It's always about who got the fastest car and the Hemi, the Challenger or the Charger or something like that. It's always based on something materialistic and superficial.
Hello? Well, that was harder. Did I lose everybody?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it seemed we see. Okay. No, it seemed we all here. All right, go ahead.
No, I heard a pause. I didn't know if somebody was still talking or something was wrong with my signal. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Go ahead, man. Tomorrow.
No, I'm good. I was just making sure that my signal hasn't dropped. I was walking around. All of a sudden, I just heard silence. I'm like, oh, come on, man.
Same.
Yeah, you don't see too much of that in the Manosphere, and I think the reason is the Manosphere has devolved into some form of chicanery, like Dr. Phoenix likes to talk about, man. And there's no place to really demonstrate your intellectual capacity. There's no way to really articulate yourself in those arenas, because it's always adversarial. It's always about who has the chip on their shoulders, who has the who wears their masculinity on their sleeve. Yeah, sapiosexual men don't typically do that, right? They just kind of show up and they speak what they know, rather than to try to act out. And these are the guys who don't get into physical altercations in the street. They're always trying to do conflict resolution, de-escalations, and things of that nature. In the Black community, they look at you and say, "Oh, well, he's weak. He's corny, lame, right? He can't fight. He's a wimp." In reality, I could fight, but what is that really going to have? What's the return on investment if I put my hands on this dude? I risk my career, everything I built, over one incident. So, conflict resolution, de-escalations, and things of that nature become a part of that everyday thinking. So you always trying to not go into everything, which
guns blazing.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think this is very true, because I've heard this on some of the panels that MOT was on, and folks would come after him, and he talked about just brothers that have something to lose. You can't get can't get involved in this quagmire of just stupidity and chicanery that happens, especially in the Black YouTube sector. I mean, again, conversations, in particular in the Manosphere, they always descend to the point of where you're just talking about, how to get some ass, or or you just some clown coon ass dude that you couldn't get no women, and the furthest thing could be from the truth. I've talked about this before, man. I've literally been in clinicals where I've had my preceptors trying to hook me up with their daughters.
Yep.
And these were white women.
That's one thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's one thing that white and Asian women tend to do, right? So they want to bring you into their environment, because they've already vetted you. So now they want to introduce you to, potential opportunities on their side. In the Black community, it's the opposite, right? So if you know more than somebody, they're gonna make sure that you keep your ass out that room, or keep your ass out that event, or they'll say something to bring you down, like, oh well, he's just a lame, he's a cornball. He can never please me. He can never do anything for me, and it's a shame because you're losing human capital in your neighborhoods, right?
Yeah.
You factor in that only 10% of the top 10% of your men get out of that neighborhood, right? If it's something like Chicago or Baltimore or something like that. If you have a family that's 100 families on a per block or something like that, whatever it is, only 10% of those brothers get out of that neighborhood, and that's the best of your 10%. And you're gonna walk away from these brothers, or you're gonna marginalize these brothers because they don't meet the stereotype that you that is common in the black community, or they don't meet the perceptions or the misconceptions that you have about them. So therefore, you just kind of write them off. What you're not realizing is that brain capital, that intellectual flight that's going to take place, that financial flight that's going to take place, is going to be impactful on that neighborhood, all because of these misperceptions about these brothers. And what happens here is those brothers ended up getting hooked up with like Dr. Phoenix just mentioned, with someone's daughter, and that guy who works at IBM, or that guy who works at Microsoft or Google or something like that, he's bringing in 120 grand a year. He gets linked up with somebody's daughter, and she's probably making 80 to 100 herself. You're talking about $250,000 that is lost from your neighborhood just on one guy alone.
Yeah. And here's the problem. Here's the other problem. Somehow you're not supposed to see that you're being treated better. You're not supposed to see any of that. You're just supposed to be 100% loyal to people who never gave a damn about you, and that's your contributions to black culture. That's a nonsense that I don't get about it.
I agree with that.
And a lot of that, yeah. I mean, just an overall overlooking of like that, like true potential, right? Because I think that there is I think that ladies within a lot of our black communities, they do look for potential in individuals who really don't show a lot of potential, if that makes sense. Like they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna support this guy, his particular music career. Like, and I don't even want to be stereotypical with that, right? But like oh, yeah, I see potential in his music, or I see potential in his athletic ability, but they don't see potential in a gentleman who's going for engineering or nursing or tech or something within the biological sciences. I mean, it's a misplaced assessment of supporting potential.
No, I agree. Here. I would 100% agree with that. Go ahead, MOT. I'm sorry, brother. Go ahead.
No, it's just at the end of the day, you kind of have this social dysmorphism going on. It's kind of like the social and the friends are far more important than future earnings potential. Yeah. Even though we know that it doesn't work that way, and then you have the huckster class of men who sit around and lie to these women just sit there and benefit, and then think that somehow you were supposed to come raise this guy's family because you're supposed to be pro-black now with your turn, even though he couldn't do that with his turn, but you're supposed to be, serve it up now.
No, and to go further to what Gay was saying, and I'll put this caveat out. I do have a lady, and her and I met her. She's a few years younger than me, but her and I met because we both were Ronald E. McNair scholars together. So we both were in the same research program together. And, right now she's in graduate school, but one of the things, she's a, young black lady, but again, that I think that comes down to learning how to, give deference to people who mess with you, and again, like I've seen this so many times in the Black Manosphere and just in general in the Black YouTube sector, where you got a lot of folks and they be on panels, and you get brothers that come on. I mean, everyone saw that shit. Everyone saw that bull crap that happened a week or so ago with Kevin Samuels. I mean, this is what happens to a lot of brothers like that, and Kevin Samuels is a brother that was a chemical engineer by trade,
Yeah.
And, but this is what you see what happens. If you're a brother and you're about that business, you're formally educated, you dress well, you're kryptonite to a lot of these bras, and they know it. You're wholesale kryptonite. You get in that room, you can immediately feel the eyeballs on.
Yeah. Indeed. That's all. Miss Reigning Woman had joined us.
Yeah, Reigning Woman.
Hello, Reigning Woman.
I think she's getting herself together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead, Emily.
I always mute my mic first.
All right, there you go, Miss.
Good evening, everyone. Happy weekend for you all. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you. Good evening to you.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. Yes. Thank you all for having another open chat during the weekend when you could be out partying and getting chocolate wasted. But I wanted to add a little bit to the sapiosexual conversation. And one thing I like to say, as a woman, that sometimes it is really hard for men to believe that a woman can really be interested in your brain or what you have to say. I know for me, many times when I'm out somewhere and I be sitting down or whatever, and I get involved in a conversation and someone goes, "Oh, but I don't want to keep talking. I don't want to breathe." If I'm like bored, no, please keep talking.
Yeah.
But I just think that unfortunately being cool has been and being a part of the crowd, to fit in, has been given so much shine and has been the one to just give the attention to where intelligence and intellectual conversation can make people uncomfortable because they just have not been conditioned to understand that intelligence and the growth of the brain is the beginning of the growth of a person, and to expand, the more we expand our mind, the more we expand as a person. And that's what helps us to be globally effective and productive, not just locally, not just where you are and not just in school. And we can all learn, none of us know everything, right? So we can all learn from someone else. It's just being willing to have that kind of exchange and being humbled, enough to say, I can learn from someone else. As a woman, that's like Mike said earlier, those kind of conversations, and just listening to men speak intelligently, and share things, and a man that can teach me something, that I know is going to make me better, in some capacity, is a huge turn on for me. And I'm just going to stop right there. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to share. I want to share the screen real quick because of this is a book that I. Yeah, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, this is a book that I own myself, and it's from Joseph C. Phillips. He played on the Cosby Show as the husband of Denise, I think. And he has a book called "He Talked Like a White Boy," and everything that we're talking about, he talks about that in the first few chapters. So it's an interesting book. You all should actually pick that up if you get the chance. I think it's an eye opener. Well, I shouldn't say it's an eye opener, but it speaks to a lot of things that Black people may have talked about behind the scenes, but he kind of comes out and talks about it openly, about the hood swagger and all that stuff being the I guess the benchmark for representing masculinity in the Black community, and that's why he says he talked like a white boy, because for him it was pretty normal for him to talk, in that fashion. But when he got around hood people, man, he got laughed at, he got dissed, man. So
I mean, and didn't a lot of that started to change like around that time where, like the Cosby, so like those early 90s, early to mid 90s, where like that particular, that hood demeanor was elevated to a new level of greatness within our community.
Well, I think that was also at the period where you saw gangster rap came in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, even within basketball, right? You had like a Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas to more of like a Allen Iverson, right?
Yeah, that changed overnight.
Yeah. Michael Jordan really didn't embrace hip hop in a lot of what he did on the court. But yeah, like I think Iverson was probably one of the first to really embrace a lot of that. Might have been even some more before my time, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say Shaquille O'Neal was along those lines as well, because he had an album as well, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so definitely a dope book. You all should pick that up, man, if you haven't read it, or if you can find it at your local library.
But you know, I think this needs to also be said. I think part of going to what Raining Woman just said, you know, black men are typically surprised that, you know, when black women are actually genuinely interested in black men who are intelligent, because again, we know that out in the streets, that ain't the currency that flies.
True.
You know, basically the currency that flies is, you know, are you the dude sitting on the 26-inch rims with the 30-year-old car or whatever, or if if you're balling enough, you know, you got a brand new 7 Series with the 26-inch rims, you know, but and basically how well you can beat a dude's ass. I mean, that's pretty much the currency that happens in black society. You don't see this valuation of black men, you know, who come in the vein of the Malcolm X's and Martin Luther King's and such like that. I mean, you don't see it. I mean, you just don't see that valuation. And going to what Mike said earlier and what I've heard Man of Tomorrow, the black community loses a lot of intellectual capital by not recognizing the value that, you know, intelligent brothers bring to the table. You know, again, you know, in other societies, they get led by their intellectuals and their business folk and their scientists and such like that. They get led. Those are the people who do the leading. Again, in black society, it's the complete opposite. We have idiots and mongrels who lead black society.
Reptile.
You know, and I hate to say it in that way, but you know, I liken it to if anyone's ever seen the second chapter of Lord of the Rings, and they were at the Helm's Keep, and you had the tens of thousands of orcs that were storming Helm's Keep, and you just say, oh well, they will never breach this gate. And that's what I kind of like in black society too, is where you have these barbarians and mongrels at the gate, and then they just run out all the people with the intellectual and the capital and the brain power.
I think this might also be notable as it concerns like those early, more like those mid 2000, 2008, 2009, kind of. I think with the surgence of like Barack Obama, it seemed to change things very momentarily, right? Because at least from a millennial perspective, looking at how his particular demeanor and persona had kind of was changing, at least for the academic black woman, right? There was started to be, I noticed personally that I started to get a little bit more attention, right? Because I was able to speak and be confident. And at times, young ladies in my peer group saw that Obama was kind of like the standard, right, for black men in America. And, you know, dudes start wearing more polos, start wearing more button-ups and sweaters and cardigans and things, and, you know, slacks rather than just Jabot jeans and Gucci or whatever. So I thought it might have been like a little bit of a spark towards that 2008 through 2010 time period. But it seems to now it seems to just be going back. Has anybody else noticed that? Or
well, I think Obama represented.
I
think Obama represented the gold standard of black male excellence, right? So it allowed, because he had the PhD, he had the the not so much as the swagger, but he had Negro dialect speak, right? He can do that and still command the room of white men. That was very important, because you didn't see that throughout the post civil rights. You didn't see anything like that. Maybe with Jesse Jackson or something like that, but not to the extent that Obama came in and did the unthinkable, and it forced a lot of people to change their whole entire perception of black men collectively, because people have been saying, you know, these type of brothers had always been around. They just didn't get the opportunity, and it was opportunity that was a differentiating factor in how you got to receive these types of men. So now you have to pay attention to brothers who are on their grind and doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, rather than the guys. You know, I know a lot of people give Nipsey Hussle a lot of credit, but we on the Black Brain Trust, we've covered over 2 dozen articles of brothers who are doing twice as much but get no little to no attention. And I think
because you don't have this fairy tale hood story where you grew up in the hood,
right?
You got caught up in the game, you got locked up, went to prison, whatever, got out and got your life together, and you did this complete 180. You know, last summer I was in Atlanta, and I met the brother Jay Morrison, and you know, he real good brother, nice brother. I mean, him and I we talked for a few minutes, and he has the what they would call the Pookie and Ray Ray story. I mean, he told us, you know, him and I talked about, you know, him, you know, being at what he calls the university. That's what he calls the street life, the university. And you know, he talked about how he got his life together. He understood that in order for him to completely do a 180 and to get to where he's at now, he had to develop. He actually had some help. He got help from a preacher from a reverend who had a church, and hooked him up with his very first real estate job, and that turned his life around. And he talked about, like, initially he wanted to give up, but he kept at it because the reverend kept supporting him and kept pushing him. And eventually, you know, he started to make some headway, and then, you know, he took the things that he learned in the street and he applied it to this corporate life, and you see where he's at now. But again, you know, most brothers coming from the hood they're not gonna do what he did. They're just not. Most of them, one, don't have the discipline, and two, don't have the intellectual capacity to do it.
It's the anomaly. Like, they look at the anomaly as the standard, right? That doesn't happen all the time. That doesn't happen most of the time. I used to actually visit prison by my university. I used to do Bible studies with prisoners from time to time with my local church by my university, and it's full of dudes. It's full of dudes from major cities, right? Talented, some very intelligent, right? Having a lot of good discourse, but they're in prison, right? They are at times, right? Especially as it concerns the prison industrial complex that's going on. That's the standard of what happens to black men who choose the hood life. They don't live a life like Jay-Z or Jay Morrison, right? So they look at the anomaly. A lot of times women look at the anomaly as the standard rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
MOT.
Go ahead, brother.
But the problem is they're rewarded for it. Like, there's no consequences against it. So it's kind of like, you know, everybody's caught up in the reptile redemption story, but they don't get that.
Yeah.
You know, everybody just can go from point A to point B without, you know what I'm saying, having a letter and some number behind their name. You know, and you can even send in a chat, man, that people just don't have the level of respect for people and really think that they could just turn around and call themselves community activists, and somehow that erases how the community got there in the first
place. You know, in my line of work, I see this all the time. Exactly what I've heard, what MOT just mentioned, and I've heard him say previously. You got a lot of these, I'm just going to be flat out honest. You got a lot of these hood dudes. They come out of prison, jail, whatever, and they come to me with this damn prison scholarly work, and then they argue with me when people invite me and pay me to come do lectures at their events, and I gotta argue with these cats because they don't like it or they want to come to me talking some hotep crap.
Yeah,
and I'm sitting here like, who the hell are you? Did you get invited here? Oh, well, your professor's white. You just heard the damn school I just told you I went to. Do you think any goddamn black folks there teaching? But this is what you run into. You run into this craziness where a lot of these hood dudes You know, a lot of them they just wholesale don't have any respect for the educated brothers, and then they come and try to dictate to you how you not a black man and what constitutes a black man.
Yeah. So what does constitute a black man based on that discussion, right? What's the benchmark, right? You had to go to jail. You had to come from poverty, right?
Okay. Well,
let's dissect what the hood is, right? The hood is a impoverished place, politically disenfranchised, and economically starved, right? So they're priding themselves on coming out of this environment. I see women do this too, right? So they pride themselves on coming out of this environment as having, you know, the ability to survive impoverishment. You know, you don't see Jews coming out of the Warsaw Ghetto saying, oh, I'm a real hustler. Yeah, I got this little hat on my head. Yeah, he takes his little hat and he puts it to the side of his head, and he walks with a bop. He's a real Jew because he came out of Warsaw.
Got a gold star like tattoo on their arm. You know, with the name of the concentration camp. No, it doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. Yep. I'm sorry, Mike.
And also a certain because they're already in reality already. Like, that's why I never understood. Like, you so real. I'm like, how are you real? Like, of course, we're in 3D America. What do you mean? You know what? Yeah. So that's why
somebody said straight out of Auschwitz.
But also,
straight out. What? It's just at the end of the day, man. We're just two different kinds and classes. That's separate from those. Only thing, at this point in time, they've had their, reckoning. It didn't work. Not for anybody. So now we have to just compete. It's just normal competition. You had your way of doing things. Now we're going to have values run things. It's not that hard.
I don't disparage brothers that you live that street life and you changed your life, you turned your life around. I don't disparage you for doing that. But you do not get to come and dictate to brothers that have struggled, did the right things, made the right choice. You do not get to come dictate to those brothers to tell and think you can tell them you ain't black because you don't talk like you some nigga been standing on a damn corner for the last 20 years drinking Old E or Mag Dog 2020 and you done jacked up your vocal cords, so now you sound like you got stage 3 esophageal cancer.
Yeah.
So no, you don't get to come tell brothers like that who the hell they are and what makes them black. Or because you don't talk with the hood vernacular.
Right. That's what Joseph C. Phillips is saying in his book. You know, he talks like a white boy. He's talking about that very thing that you're bringing up. Go ahead, MOT.
It's at the end of the day. This is and we have to just be quite honest that with most people who are uninformed, it's just not the way to go from here on. There's just no way you can do that. I mean, as easy it is to claim that you are pro, that word. Somehow you could get past for wrecking and destroying the entire community, but now that you care, we should just let them off the hook for that. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like you don't go rob a bank and then you can't just apply for a job there and say, you know what, I'm pro money now. I'm pro legal money now. Give me a job. But at the end of the day, they're at the end of their rope and they don't want to lose the power that they've stolen. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing we can do about that or for them. So there's no more hostages that they can take. You've already taken all the hostages that you possibly could take with the future generations that you done screwed up. So there's really no more things you can pretty much hold against others as hostages, even make us even care that much about trying to fix your situation. Because when you're talking about trying to fix their situation, you're just going to fix it, and then they're going to turn around and just mutiny you up out of there. because they still don't have that baseline respect for you. So why fix it?
I think somebody has a YouTube channel that's up combined with having a live one, because I'm getting the echo from Mana tomorrow. I'm not sure what it is.
I think it might have been his connection. I think he said he was traveling, so he might be his connection. So
Oh, okay. Now I was also gonna. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
May I also interject that it is insulting to have someone to say that you talk like a white boy or a white girl. I used to get that a lot too. Like, I talk like a white girl. I'm like, I talk like a white girl. How about I talk like I read books?
Mm-hmm.
That
How about you
that
talk like you do spoken word?
Yep.
and that too. Yes. You know, like exactly. And who said that talking ebonics and talking slang like that was the standard language of the American black person?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
well,
Yeah, it
quick
kind of
question for you,
reminds me
reigning
of.
woman.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question for you, reigning woman. Who did you hear from most? Was it just people out in the community, or did it come from your family first?
Oh no, never from my family.
Mm,
Always the black kids at school
okay.
or in other social events.
Okay.
Always black people.
Because I know typically, and this is my personal experience, and this is the experience of a couple of the young brothers that I talked to, and in particular the two young brothers that I mentor. You know, they talk to me about this. Usually, when young brothers hear this, first people they're hearing it from is from family members. And and one of the things I tell them that as you move up in this world, as you get these accomplishments under your belt, the first people you're going to have to jettison is going to be your family. In black society, that's how it always going to be for the most part until things change. The
Mhm.
first people that black males specifically are going to have to get rid of is going to be your family. And the problem is we do have this thing where we do have this mama's boy syndrome that goes on in black society, where you got a lot of these black males know their mothers are dysfunctional, know their sisters are dysfunctional, and they cannot divorce themselves of them. They cannot divorce themselves of these relationships. I see it all the time. They are emotional. They have impulse, discipline, control issues, and for the most part, many of them ultimately end up messing up their lives because they just couldn't. They end up pursuing the kinds of women that remind them of the women that raised them.
Yeah, we actually in my family we encourage intelligence. We encourage studying, we encourage reading, we encourage expansion. So it was never in my family. Now, I have stepbrothers and stepsisters, and when we were growing, that were raised differently before our families merged, and so they used to tease my older brother, my brother and I a lot at first, but then it began to be like where they began to kind of really respect it and want to try to duplicate it. Because at times you go through this comparison thing, especially when you're just brought up differently, and it's not always intended to be that way. It's just part of if it's just lying there in your background, in the background of your life, in the background of your head, even if it's just playing, and that's just what plays out, is what manifests. But then when they saw that um, it was truly encouraged and definitely did not make me feel any less cool, or it didn't make me feel any less than to be by myself and to read a book, or to sit. I could sit for hours and just read the encyclopedias. um, and for my brother to get good grades, to study, and to stay on the sports team, to stay on the basketball team, and yet to have all his a lot of his friends and everything were considered to be part of the cool crew. They just weren't gangsters. So then it began to be where it was just kind of like a, I wanted to be like to kind of duplicate it, or try to learn about it, like kind of interested, but at the same time feeling like they couldn't compare, they couldn't compete when there was really no need to compete. But now, as grown individuals, all grown individuals, it's even more appreciated with the step side of my family. You know, the ones that have been around and come around.
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to how this conversation initially kicked off with what Mike V was saying and what MOT was saying, about Chicago. Again, for me, that was the major reason why I ended up joining the military. I had to get the hell away from the folks, from my family, because they were hella dysfunctional, and I would have never been able to do any things I've been able to do thus far in my life had I not joined the military and got the hell away from these folks. And, and again, had I, like I said, the major thing that drew me to the, that I even started get interested in the Black Manosphere is because I initially heard that interview that O'Shea Duke Jackson did with MOT, and he talked about, he talked a little about his background and how he left, after high school. I think he said he left the day after he graduated, a day of or something like that, for the military. And again, and and the funny thing was like, yeah, had I not made that choice in my life, I mean, I was a solid college student at that point, but it's just like you're just around so much crap that eventually it's gonna drag you down.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
And that's something that a lot of brothers don't realize, and it's one of the major life lessons I teach to the young brothers that I mentor, is about understanding that as you get these accomplishments under your belt, if you want to move in certain circles, you want to get certain letters or behind your name, your circle, those circle of people, your family is going to get smaller and smaller.
Yeah, I was gonna say also, it reminds me of, have you guys heard of like Plato's work, The Allegory of the Cave? So it's
Plato?
Yeah, Plato.
I used to get that from Toys R Us.
Oh, really? I'm talking about but I mean, like the philosopher Plato, he had so it's called The Allegory of the Cave. It kind of has a setup of where there's prisoners inside of a cave, and they're facing one wall, and they're not able to turn their heads, their bodies, or anything, and all they can see is that one wall. Behind them is a fire that burns, and in front of that fire, there's a bridge. Every time someone walks, or people who are not bound to the cave walk past the bridge, the prisoners see the shadows, right? So their reality is based upon everything that is not actual, but rather is based upon the shadows and the sounds of what they hear, right? So a lot of so I guess what he's trying to form is that their whole reality is not based upon the whole reality is not based upon reality or facts. It's based upon shadows and figures of facts, right? Things that represent real things. So one day, one of the prisoners actually was able to get away from the cave. And the prisoner was actually able to get out of the cave and see what reality was. And to make a long story short, the prisoner was able to go back to the other prisoners, and he's trying to explain to these prisoners what reality was, right? Even though their whole reality is shaped on figures and shadows. Those in the cave, the prisoners in the cave, ended up killing him because they thought he was crazy and a madman, right? And a lot of kind of this discussion that we're speaking of course, it had other meanings and other symbolisms and things that he was trying to point out in the form of forms, right? That was one of his big themes. But I think it applies to a lot of what happens within our community, is that we try to go back at times and we sound crazy. We are speaking a whole different language. We are not in the know, or we aren't perceived as being in the know or being in touch with the community, to the point where it causes a bit of adverse feelings from our community to us, right? They're like, oh, these people are crazy. People don't know what they're talking about. These people are other. So yeah, that kind of reminded me of some of the conversation that we've been having about the otherness that we experience from our own communities that we come from.
Yeah, and then another you assimilated that, and in retrospect, somehow you have assimilated to Southern Warners.
You're breaking up heavy. If you can repeat that.
MOT, you're breaking up a whole lot, man. If you could log off and log back on, that might help you. Truth is, I know it. What's going on, bro? First time on the panel.
Mike V, how you doing?
I'm chilling,
What's
bro.
going on, brother?
Man, excellent chat.
Hey, welcome.
Excellent chat. Thank you. You know, for me, it's it's competing cultures, right? We've read this. You know, a lot of Black scholars have really talked about this and explained this, and then and we're actually living it, and so. It's kind of interesting. I look at it like this too, where you have certain segments of the Black community who feel powerless, and part of that intercultural power that they have is they got power over the educated class. It's like, well, you ain't no real nigga. You from
How did that happen though? How did that happen? Truth.
Well, geez, I don't really know exactly, but I could tell you. I think one aspect of it is just as you approach whiteness, quote unquote whiteness, you start to have this resentment towards people because, and I guess this is from what I've read, this isn't really a new phenomenon, but like it's always sort of been this way where if you achieve a certain amount of success, people from a lower class will look at you with resentment and mistrust because you should be out here fighting white supremacy. You should be out here, trying to fight the white man. So how'd you get educated? How'd you get good health? How'd you get success? You must have sided with them. And I think that's kind of, I think that goes back, quite a ways. What's his name? I read the first place. I recently read that in Soul on Ice, and he explained that probably better than anybody. And and that was written in the '60s, and he was talking about stories from maybe that was written in the '50s, and he was talking about stories from the '30s. So that's been around at least 100 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I don't know how brothers feel about Obsidian, but I do like Obsidian. I think he does. I think a lot of what he talks about is pretty well researched and informed. And one scholar he does talk about in particular is Elijah Anderson, his book Code of the Streets, and it talks a lot, and he speaks exactly to this idea of what happens, how you get this dumbing down of Black society. And so again, he speaks to that, and you've had scholars across the spectrum speaking about this. You even had some of your conscious scholars speaking about this. People know Black society knows this exists, but we try to play like it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And ultimately, what happens is that Black society as a whole loses out on precious intellectual capital. And the Black folks that are smart, that are intelligent, have the ability to bring their knowledge and skills back to the community and be able to help rebuild it. But again, if you do that, you'll sell out, you'll coon, you all these other damn things. So
yeah, the shaming is detrimental to the individual, and it forces them into hiding because it's a fight or flight situation for them, right? You can either put up a fight and get into a physical altercation, or you're going to take flight and go live in the suburbs and where it's peaceful and quiet, and you don't have to deal with all the the immediate constraints of urban society. And I see this a lot, man. I see women supporting these types of men who are parasites to the community, and they rationalize a lot of their behavior. Like, for example, I got rear-ended a little while back, probably about a year or so back, and the guy tried to take off or something like that. He was texting. I could see in my rearview mirror he was texting, and he hit me. So the woman that I was talking to at the time, sister, said, "How come you didn't punch him?" I said,
what?
Yeah, like that's a response because he rear-ended me, that I should somehow get into a physical altercation with him.
Come on. Yeah.
And she was surprised that I, exchanged insurance papers with him. That's what adults do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
that's what we see.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, let the insurance figure it out. Let them fight. And
right. So we pay for insurance every month, right?
Yeah, that's the whole purpose of it. So she was turned off at the idea of me not getting into altercation. So
Oh,
I
man.
I carry concealed too, right? I'm I'm a Class A carry concealed guy. So
Mhm.
she tried to taunt me, saying you need a gun because you're a punk. I said the thugs got guns, and nobody else ain't saying nothing about that.
Yeah,
That
they pouring out
conversation
liquor
ended.
every day for them thugs. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
shoot.
yeah.
You
Well,
know, that's so crazy. That's so
That's
crazy. I
wild,
mean,
Mike. That's
I
wild.
live in a state that's concealed carry, and and I mean, I mean this is ridiculous. Like I said before, I grew up in Chicago, and anybody that grew up in Chicago will know if you go take a trip down to the damn Cook County Jail, you know probably half the dudes sitting in lockup right now waiting for arraignment is they're probably sitting in jail right now because of a female.
Yeah.
And dudes are getting I-bonds all damn day out of Cook County Jail. And again, you
Man.
know, I'm not even about to go there. I'll leave it be.
Dang, Mike, you ain't use that strap, man. You're not certified in the hood.
oh man, you hear it a lot, man.
Yeah.
It's interesting to perceive masculinity as you have to be physical with every single confrontation. It always requires that you ball your fists up,
Right.
fight somebody. That might work as a teenager, right? You can get away with that in middle school or something like that. But as an adult, you don't know what that other person is carrying.
Yep.
They don't know what you're carrying. That can
No,
turn
that-
into a bloody situation really fast, man.
Man, that should get you killed out here in these
Easily.
streets. I'm in Wisconsin, man. I can tell you right now, most of the white folks out here, they carrying something. I'm telling you that right now. I mean, and dudes be on that rah shit out here. And again, we see this all the time. You can be all up in black neighborhoods and you be on that rah crack because 9 times out of 10, dudes ain't got most of the cats ain't really walking around holding anything like that because a lot of them got cases on them anyway, so don't want to get caught with a weapon and stuff like that. But again, a lot of these cats they only do it, and I would just call it what it is. It's cowardice. They only would do it with black folks because they know better when they get around these other folks.
I'm at the range, man. I can tell you, them them white guys are, they carrying, man.
Man, they all of them packing. When I was in the military, I got a homeboy right now. He a white, country white boy. He lives in Tennessee. This dude was giving me all kinds of weapons when I was in the military. He was giving me all kinds of stuff. He like, whatever you need, I got you. And it just like that's just how they do. That's just how they roll. It's part of the culture. But again, it's one of those things. Like, yeah, they do it for sport. They like shooting weapons and stuff like that. But again, also part of it is that it's part of the culture. But in black society, basically your idea of your black manhood is centered around the fact if you got a piece, you better pop off a few. You better bust a dude with it. If you ain't got some bodies on you, you ain't that dude.
Yeah, it's a real nigger benchmark, right? This sort of idea that you can leap from a building, you can leap out the window in a single bound, and you're gonna swoop in, and you're gonna do this, and you can beat everybody up. And it's like there's ways of how we interact with each other as men, man, and especially when you talk about.
Where do you think this programming comes from? You think it's media driven on why we have this type of mentality? You think it's something that's just perpetuated within our environment? Like,
I know one aspect.
Think like that.
I've got one aspect just from my own experiences, just growing up in the inner city, and I grew up around a lot of street dudes, because we grew up fighting a whole lot. I mean, a whole lot. Right. Growing up in Portland is a white city, so we grew up having to fight white people, and then we got older, and then you got to fight black and white people. And so I had a friend, right? He led the state in rushing. He got a Division II scholarship. If he had better grades, I think maybe he'd have gotten to a bigger school. And he actually had a job at the courthouse. He graduated from college, and he was still selling weed. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you work for the courthouse since high school. You go to college, you get out, you work for the courthouse again. You got a great career. And you're selling weed on the side, and he goes over to this white dude's house who was selling weed for him. He brought his little brother over there, and he ended up starting this fight. They ended up stabbing his little brother in the neck. So his little brother dies, and now he's in the Oregon State Penitentiary.
Oh, that's
And
it.
I'm like, the reason why you were still doing that is because you didn't grow out of that. It was like stuck in this juvenile way of thinking. And I had another friend die about 2 years ago. Similar instance. He was with his little brother. They were out at a bar. His little brother got in a fight, and my homeboy Anthony tried to break it up, and he ended up getting murdered. And he's like a rough dude. He never grew out of it either. Now he was still the street dude though. He was a little bit different. But what I got out of that, you know, because I kind of feel it too, like there's something in me where I still like to fight. I mean, you know, I don't fight, but I haven't been fighting, you know, in over a decade, but it's like still in me. And I was thinking if I didn't have the resources and the education and the tranquility that I built for myself, I probably could get drawn in that lifestyle. So I think, you know, it can be hard to leave. Yeah.
Well, I see. Go right ahead, Rainy Woman.
I was going to say, I think also is that no one takes in consideration that the men and the black man is of no value. He's of no use to us when he is locked up or when he is dead for a senseless cause. And as women, women are supposed to be the ones to be able to calm a man down and calm a man down and to talk him down from endangering his life unnecessarily versus egging it on.
I mean, but we see the complete opposite in Black society. We see that most of the time dudes are getting into fights with each other is usually because there's a female or a few females in the background egging those dudes on. And again, you know, I've listened to some of the other dudes in the Black Manosphere, and they told similar stories how they fought other black men because some black women, you know, egged them on, and then they had sex with the women afterwards. I mean, this is just crazy.
Yeah, because that's just like what you do, right?
Yeah.
Crap.
Yeah, that's backwards. But then I think people also they never really tell you that that going to prison is not cool. You know, they don't tell you how they're no matter how tough they appear or they make it sound on the outside, that when you're actually doing that time, that it's not as cool and you're not as bad, you're not as tough. I mean, you might have a tough situation, you know, you might can appear tough to a few of the other inmates or whatever, but you're not tough when you're by yourself and you're getting jumped, and you're not tough when you try to threaten us a corrections officer or something, and in the midst of your threat, you know, you're getting served, you know, you're getting handled. You know, they don't tell you those stories. They don't tell you how that's not glorifying.
Yeah, and I think there's this idea that going to jail is a part of that benchmark, right? It's a real nigga benchmark. The masculinity of black men is manufactured through poverty and criminalization, right? That somehow if you're not grinding like them, if you're not in the trenches like them, then you're not a real black man, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of like the U.S. prime beef stamp from the USDA. You know, you're like real nigga certified at that point.
And that really is devastating for the black community because, you know, you're a family man, you're a father, you're married, you've got kids that are successful, that are going to good schools. And now all of a sudden your boy goes out there and they say, you ain't no real nigga. Look, you was raised in the suburbs. And he's like, what? I was supposed to be raised in the suburbs. I was supposed to get a good education, you know, and you know, I guess you guys were saying that before, but it's just like really horrible how it usurps power from black men who do the right thing and provide the best lives for their children. They're seen as the least black, and you know, and then it just creates this cycle.
Yeah, they're starting to call these guys coons now. You know, you did all the right things, but you're a coon, right? Just doing the right things, right? So they've redefined the word coon so that it fits upwardly mobile black men, right? And what you're starting to see now is guys attacking, you know, minimum wage workers at Walmart, you know, who hold up, you know, the signs and at Walmart, or who's out there, to check cash in line, something to that effect. A low minimum wage white male is a white supremacist. You need to go in there and beat him down because that's a victory for black people. It's so stupid.
Man,
it's true.
I mean, they did win, though. I mean, you can't argue with their results. They have set us back to the Stone Age when it comes to black people, just based on them being able to over procreate and pretty much destroy everything. I mean, they have won. I mean, we have a whole culture set up on rewarding things that don't make sense.
Yep.
So, but you can't argue with the results. I mean,
prime example, right? I mean, Gucci man, go to prison. He get out. He's probably even more popular than he was before he went into prison.
Again, it's that bona fide hood story, man. You ain't that real nigga if you ain't got them bodies or that prison record on your.
Kodak Black went to prison, got out. He got way more popular than he was before. What's his name? T.I. in and out of prison, but he's like the hood. I don't know, the hood guru or whatever. I mean, and like you said, the numbers and the results show that it's something that people are consuming and people are supporting. You go to prison, you come out, your career is different, better, especially in the music field. So
yeah. But here's the problem. If you notice this pattern, they're just going to tell you that you didn't get enough depleted women. So that way you wouldn't be able to notice all this common sense and reason. That's what they point to whenever they get cornered. Or else they don't have any other thing to just bring up. They're like, well, you didn't get no ass. Big Joker, just walk off. Like, come on, dude. That didn't even make no damn sense. Like, no, that stuff actually did happen. But when you're dealing with mouth-breathing reptiles.
but MOT, do you have your UCC? Are you UCC certified?
UCC certified? I have one against my company.
It's on the joke. Here it comes. Go ahead, Mike.
Uh-oh.
Wait, UCC?
Yeah.
It means you're sovereign. It's a sort of you don't have to adhere to American laws.
Shot by the police whenever they just keep walking, right?
Yeah.
They're sovereign. Oh, okay. All right.
I thought it was a joke, Colin. My bad, Mike.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
We got Richard Vixen and Richard Victor, sorry, Vixen and Dollar Will on here. What's going on, bro?
What's going on, brothers?
Hey, welcome.
This thing has been going on, of course, as everybody said, this thing has been going on a while.
First, do you know what a sapiosexual is?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you had experiences with a sapiosexual woman?
That's the only experience I could have. She would have to be sapiosexual.
Okay.
I mean, how I don't know what I mean. Being me, I don't know how it can happen any other way. And so but I guess that's the primary thing we want to talk about. I mean, I would say on that, it takes a special kind of woman, first of all, because and it takes the awareness of the man back to know thyself, because women go through it's a struggle for the woman to claim her sapiosexual man when that's not the dominant choice made in the community. So a lot of I didn't mean to necessarily talk about this, but a lot of the dating advice that's discussed in the Manosphere is kind of toxic for a brother that I guess in need of attracting a woman who likes sapiosexuals, okay, or is driven that way to be attracted to intelligence. So it's a different. The game is different. Now, I mean, it's not, of course, completely different because you're dealing with men and women, and she's got to have some kind of attraction to you. But the man has to understand that she is.
I think think white supremacy is attacking your.
You know, Dollar Will, your mic is breaking up a lot. I think you should log off and log back on.
Okay.
Richard, you have anything you want to add to this? Yeah, I guess Richard's having some mic issues, or he's tied up.
Well, I think, MOT hit it right on the nail. What happens is that we have, the inmates that have just overran the asylum. I mean, again, what happens is that these folks, you have these low IQ folks, they procreate and they produce other low IQ people. And so basically the law, what's happening out here now is that natural selection is happening. Whether it's gentrification, folks are getting phased out of, these low skill, low wage sectors of the economy because of, again, one of the major things we talked about the last couple of weeks has been automation. So what's happening now is that you're hearing these death knells. These are, you're seeing these articles practically, every day where, black folks are talking about there's gentrifying, white folks then came in, them bought up everything or whatever the case may be. And we're seeing this. And what's happening now is that we're finding out that, the black folks that do have the ability to actually produce some tangible outcomes in black society, it's just like, hell, let it burn. It is what it is. We'll rebuild from the ashes like the phoenix. So,
Dollar Will, you have the mic together?
You'd have to tell me. Is it messing up now? How's it sounding? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, brother.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. Well, listen, all I was saying is that, it's a struggle for the woman because it's important to women that their circle of women and their family approve of the man. And so the man has to look like that standard, however dysfunctional, we think of it. He has to come packaged that way in order for easy acceptance because, just like men compare women in terms of, we're competitive about our date looking as on par with the dates of the guys in our circle or looking, acting, and what have you, being on par. Well, the same is true for women. And so if you are a brother in need of attracting a sapiosexual woman, that's going to be a tough sell for her in the community because it's harder for women to go against the grain than it is for men.
Well, we have a woman on the panel. Let's ask Reigning Woman.
What are you asking me?
Is any of what I just said, does it ring true or not? Let me put it more specifically. So you're here, I'm presuming that you are attracted to intelligent men. Do the women in your circle, in your life, have they supported your selections of these men or attraction to these men?
Absolutely.
Wow. So are they also sapiosexual, the women in your circle?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those that are not, I'm not really close to. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not anyone that they're not anyone that I run really close with. You know what I'm saying? I respect them, we have a good friendship, but they're not like I wouldn't say they're like my twin or like they're not a duplicate of me.
Well, how about this? I had a lot of my argument was built on the premise that it's important to women how their friends feel about their selection, their date or mate selection. Is that true?
That is not true with me. I care that my people are safe, that they're in a healthy relationship, that they are respected and that they give respect, and that my family, personally, that my family.
Okay, how about this? Exempting yourself. You're the unit. Let me do.
Oh, exempting myself, then yes. I have definitely seen and I've definitely heard where females care about what their friends have to say about who they deal with. But these are usually women that vibrate on a lower frequency.
Right, right. So I would say to the men looking for sapiosexual women, keep don't meet her friends until you really get bonded to, with that woman. I just leave it at that. You know, have that private time where it's just the two of you to really connect before you expose that relationship out, you know, to the rest of the community, because she might not be strong enough, or the union, the connection might not be strong enough to endure it. But that's just on the real.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So that's, you know, all I have is my life. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the entirety of my life experience. Mike, you asked me that question, of course, you know.
Well, I think also that personally, I have the opinion that you should meet people's friends, their close associates, and everything, both male and female. You know, the men should meet the who their girlfriends or who they closely associate with, and vice versa, because you can learn a lot about a person also by their friends and how they relate to them, how they respond, how they act around them.
Right, exactly. But I think, and when I joined, because you guys were talking about the whole, I guess what were you talking about?
Am I speaking to Dollar Will or Dr. Phoenix? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I think when you talk about the, you know, there's always been a class. This class divide is real, okay, and it's a values thing. I'm not even really coming down. I mean, being the college dropout here, I'm not really sure it's about education per se. Because the divide is there before you even get to the point of having a college degree. Okay, it's a values divide that you see even at, you know, young ages. You have one young male, since we're really talking about principally male culture. You'll have one male. You know, you ask every 6 or 7 year old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a disproportionate number of males want to be a football player. Yep. or basketball. That's normal. You know, I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, we all, you know, we like burst of energy at that age. We, you know, love the, you know, rough and tumble, and they make a lot of money and they got a great life. Somewhere along your life, as you get closer to 16 years old, you pretty much know where you fall on that athletic scale in terms of if professional sports is in your future. You're going to know that somewhere by 16 years old. You're going to figure that out, because you're going to know where you are in the pecking order in your neighborhood on the basketball court or the football field. You're going to know that. And so at some point, you're going to, you know, some people naturally start to change their objective to other things, and they have realized they have an interest in other things. But the community has this, like, you know, like you guys were saying about the whole, you know, the not just the, I would say the swag. That's one thing that I'm separate that from the criminal. Okay, the criminal. And so, you know, and so here we are aspiring to be. I think at that age I wanted to be a sports reporter. At 16, I think that's what I wanted. So but I knew that a college degree was going to be important in that path, and I knew at that young age that studying history and basically a liberal arts education, I knew that was important So doing homework and that kind of stuff was important. So I'm gonna borrow that term from Tony Maceo. He talks about a regime change. So when a brother goes off and pursues the academic path and the corporate path, you come back to the neighborhood, you represent a regime change. You know, because the brothers that was there, they stand for something else. They have a different value system. They can't respect you. They're not going to just turn over the mantle to you, you know, because that competition among men is real. And so I think ultimately that's what it is. It's really just male competition, you know, who's going to be the alpha in the community. And you can't come back the antithesis of the criminal.
Well, I mean, I think it's even very similar with the age, right? So like I have like older uncles, right? Probably 20, 30 years older than me. And that same negative hood embrace is the same embrace I get from my family members.
Right. And so your uncles, how old would they be right now?
They're probably like 55.
Okay, boom. That's my age. They're my peers. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's in my neighbor and my friends in my age group. I have, you know, and even I have that debate with them about why do they offer like this measure of respect to criminals. I got a very close friend. I offer, you know, we've been having a 30-year debate on why is it that every man that can slay a lot of women, he's a king in your eye. It doesn't matter about them, you know, that these women are married or that, you know, the disrespect, right, families being ruined, kids everywhere. But just if he can slay a lot of women, that alone, he's king. And so I've been having that argument for decades.
What's that, like a stab thing, James Bond? Like, what is that? Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, finally got it. Yeah, I finally got it. Yeah, my mic had to troubleshoot my mic. Yeah, how y'all doing, man? Peace to everybody. Yeah, go ahead though. My bad. I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead. You got the floor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to finally be on the panel, man. This is my favorite spot in the Manosphere, man. You know,
other than the BAIO.
Yeah. Well, Manosphere completely separated from. That's how we look at it. But yeah, this is a great topic, man. And yeah, I've been having a lot of stuff going through my head listening to everybody. You know, I think everything we've been talking about, I mean, the core issue is the women have the control. That's where all these problems coming from. The women have more control in our society here. It's a power struggle.
But do you know what a sapiosexual is first?
Yes, a woman that's more. I don't have an exact definition, but she's attracted. But you're attracted to the mental faculties, more the intellectual side of a person.
Like she's sexually attracted to intellectualism in men, right?
Yeah.
So do you have any experience dealing with those women?
Yes, I've had twice. Yes.
Okay.
But
you say you came from the streets before. Can you speak to like some of the experiences that you had of you know, your street runnings and how that affected?
Well, and this goes back to what I was just talking about. It's the women. I can say that a lot of my actions in the past and dudes I used to run with, you know, a lot of dudes ain't gonna want to admit it. We try to make it seem like it ain't that, but the actions are coming from the women. You know, a lot of stuff, a lot of these problems are empowered by the women. Hands down, you know, I could, and you know, I know of situations, and this ain't even, and I ain't talking about empowered by hood women. I'm talking about middle class women. You know, dudes in the hood fucking them too. So,
language, brother.
Yeah, excuse me, sorry, my bad. You know, I know of situations where women, you know, kind of like playing, what's the game with this musical chairs with dudes, like they running through the whole clique. men are disposable to them. You know, one dude go to jail, they go into the next dude.
But
I'm talking about running game around whole neighborhoods. I mean,
can I push back on that, brother, just a little bit? Now,
go ahead.
I mean, I hear you. I'm not defending the women's behavior by no measure, but I'm also not going to allow the men to get a pass for being for being I can't buck dance around it, for being weak, to allow themselves to be controlled and manipulated like that. You know, it's like I still maintain, until you can walk away from a butt naked dime, you ain't arrived.
Yeah, I don't 100% agree, or even any percentage agree with the idea that this is just a woman thing. I think because it's not fair to the women who are sapiosexuals, they get put into that category too, right? A dude from the streets can't pull a sapiosexual woman. It's just not going to happen. Raining Woman, Cocaine Kells have already co-signed that in the chat. And I believe Brooklyn Star may have co-signed
I agree with that. But most of these women are not sapiosexuals.
Right, because there's no space for them, right? So we have to create the space for them to be that, right? So that's why you have the Black Brain Trust.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what, Mike? I want to push back on that idea that the women say that they can't be pulled by a man that's not, I guess, intellectual. That's defined. I'm coming from the standpoint of this part confession here that, you know, we're more, you know, we got a lot in common, the men and the women now. So a lot of the effery on, you know, that's across both sides. That I know me, and I know the kind of women that's going to, at the end of the day, respect me. And so if she's not attracted to intelligence, and you know, somebody that's cerebral, then I'm not gonna be the one, because I'm gonna talk too much to her. You know, and so that's not gonna be it. But hey, sometimes I attract women that think I'm somebody that I'm not, and I can tell what they like about me. And if I see that that my mind is not like driven, it's not like the main thing driving her attraction, immediately I'm going to make that a short-term relationship. I'm going to decide that unilaterally. Okay, so and now with that said, I know women that well, you know, women are human. Now they will be with a guy that's the opposite, okay, of the sapiosexual. Now it's not going to be it might be a one-off. You know, he gonna have a narrowly focused job description, put it like that. You know, but he can get in now.
Yeah, I think I'm about to agree with that too.
He can get in now. See, that's the thing. Everybody can get in.
You mean like you mean like in the conscious community, like when they tell, you know, women in the conscious community, oh, women can reproduce children without men, and they're enamored by that.
I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're talking about.
I've heard things in the conscious community. I'm not gonna say whose channel it's on, but they're well-known, supposedly representatives of the conscious community on YouTube, and I've heard some of the discussions, and they've tried to so quote pseudo intellectualism towards these women, and you know, you can reproduce children without black men, that the black woman is God, and it's like, oh.
Well, let me say this. I mean, that steers the conversation somewhere else. Not everything you hear discussed. I mean, first of all, we don't even know what the conscious community is, all right, first of all. And on some of these channels, you couldn't even get agreement on those channels if everybody on those channels is conscious. Okay, so everything you hear on those channels, I wouldn't say is representative of any definition of consciousness or conscious community. So yeah, that's not fair, man, to make, you know, I mean, that would be like somebody making you defend something we talking that you hear in the Manosphere, like, you know. You know, we got a lot of stuff that can't be defended here in the Manosphere.
If it's not 3.0 compliant, then we don't have to defend it.
No. So
anyways, we got brother Nagone from the Big Apple. What's going on, bro?
So
What's up, baby? What's up, panel?
More butter late stuff, bro.
Nagone, good to see you.
What's going on? What's going on, baby?
What's going on, brother?
Man, it's great to see you cats in here, man. Kind of busting it out and getting live. Oh, I love the brain trust. But anyway, yeah, you guys are kind of kicking it kind of strong on this conversation. I would have to say, as far as you know, sapiosexual women who really like, you know, intelligent men, they do have somewhat of an aversion to the kind of the reptilian brother out there acting crazy with the black lips and the gold teeth and all that. They don't really like them that much. They don't. They tend to go for a certain kind of guy. That's what the tendency tends to be. And what percentage of black women are really sapiosexual, I wouldn't have any way of really measuring that, just to say. But you know, they're out there. I'll just put it like that. So you know, can these street thug type dudes, you know, get in there too? I would say probably so, but you know, what would be their preference? I think, you know, knowledge tends to turn some women on more than others.
Yeah, Nagone, I'm making a distinction between a quick hit and a relationship.
Okay. You know, I can accept that. I definitely can. But women who tend to like smarter men tend to, I think, to make better choices as well. And that's why I think a lot of maybe the sapiosexual type of woman out here might be a bit more rare than common.
I got a question for y'all brothers. Why isn't more? I seem like I done ran across more sapiosexual women in other races than ours. Can somebody explain that to me?
I got a theory. Because we were at the bottom of the economic level strata, and so we define, I guess, up, down, strong, weak. You know, who's alpha and who's beta, in non-economic, non-profession. It's not graded terms on education and professional status. So it has so the standard is something that can be more universally applied across the community. So that's, I think that kind of forces us to be measured in that way, you know, viewed in that way. But why do these other women? Why are they more conditioned that way? I think it's because more of their men, other white men have a more dynamic definition of you know, who's alpha. It's more than just street corner. And so I think it's more white men get to qualify for that higher status. So more women, I think it just creates an opportunity where it's more acceptable for more white women to select those guys. And their culture produces more of those guys.
So I got another question. How can we create an environment to produce more sapiosexual, not just in the, you know, men and women?
I think really what it comes down to is what's pushed and what's valued more in your community. It's a cultural thing, and we can actually develop more of them if we push certain things a little stronger. A lot of women do understand that, especially in other communities, Asian communities, the Caucasoids and so forth. Even with respect even to the Africans who are coming over, who get a lot of education and doing very well, we've seen that they tend to look, they want people who are intelligent or degreed and so forth. It really comes down to kind of culture. We have to push that a bit more. I think the better or the more we push education, we've always been about education, but the more we push it in the media, the more we think that is the way to go. I think we'll see more of that, because it's without a fact people who tend to be smarter, people who tend to be brighter, people who tend to be better educated are better providers, tend to make more money, they tend to do better. That's the tendency. Not in every single case, but that's what the tendencies tend to be. So if you're a betting person, you know, the bottom line is I'm going to put my money on this guy who's getting a degree in electrical engineering, or aerospace engineering, or or biochemistry, or in biomechanics or something like that, I'm going to tend to, or he's getting a medical degree, or he's a technical, he's a technical, high technical person. You're going to tend to, they're going to tend to do better. So that's, it's funny because you see these little white girls running around school. Yeah, I like the nerds. Wow, I don't want to go with the big jocks, the nerds.
Yep.
The big jocks. They'll probably be washed out in football, but the nerd, he's going to be building some company or something. I'll be making money that way. So they start to look at things very practically, and that's how. And they're trained from being young to look at that. That's something we don't stress a lot. I think it comes to be stressed. It's cultural. We can overcome that. If we push that a lot more, and I think education is the key, is the nexus in this game that you have to really put this in the house. Go ahead.
Do you think, in a group, do you think the man or the woman as a collective has more control of enforcing that sapiosexuality that kind of what happened in the environment, so to speak?
I think really, to a large extent, it's very dependent upon the men. The better educated you get, the more education you push, the more attractive you become. I was just having a conversation with my mother, and we were talking about people in our family, and many of us who came directly out of slavery, we owned property. We tended to work the farms. We tended to put the men more towards education. We weren't sharecroppers per se, so we were able to get well educated pretty quickly. And we were talking about great grandpapa, and Miss Josephine, who we married. She was 21 years old. Everybody, she was 21, and what was he? Damn near 60. So today it's like, what, we're doing that, but we still see that younger women tend to go with the smarter, better educated, more wealthy kind of people. That's just kind of how this game has been played. And that's the game that we're in. And we've got a skewed kind of game going on here where we're telling you, he's a jawline nigga, and he's got this, he's going to get all this, he's going to get all this. You got the 80-20 rule, and you got certain women running across the country with a wet ass to go jump on some other dude who's supposed to be, they get knocked up. And next thing you know, they're over there with a baby crying in the background, and then, and people are wondering, where Pappy at? Not very smart, not very intelligent. So these are not good moves to be made. Better moves are made by those who think a bit more responsibly, and so much of this is on the men. If you're well educated, if you tend to be productive, you tend to be the winners out here. That's just kind of how it goes. We got a skewed game going on in our community. Many of us can talk about the godocracy and so forth. We can get into that in many different levels, which we have found rather deleterious and injurious in our community.
Yeah, that's actually the train of thought I was going down. The godocracy.
Yeah.
So we need to establish a patriarchy, which I don't think we can establish here. That's actually where I was headed to.
Well, Rich,
go ahead, MOT.
MOT.
For this particular topic, I don't think that there are more sapiosexuals in other cultures that just know how to pick men better. And it's kind of hard to distinguish the two when somebody is receiving that sort of quote-unquote attention, whether it's based on the person is smart or whether the person is based on, I know how to pick a man with attention. I mean, that's just the way it is culturally. Dude is just happy that somebody wants to talk to him. So it's kind of hard to kind of see those things when it comes from one culture to the next, but we just know it doesn't happen often in Black culture, period.
Can I add a couple thoughts here? Richard, you asked that question about why is this happening, and that really got my mind kind of working. And I look at this as like a lot of Black people, just historically, we come from an environment that causes PTSD with lynchings and and slavery, and just like this threat of going out into the world, and you have to deal with racial violence in the past, and that got embedded into the culture to some degree. And then with drugs in the community and gangs, and so then we have a Black collective that has to be hyper vigilant looking out for crime, street crime, mass incarceration type of problems, or even sex crimes, with family members and all this old wild stuff. Then there's all this type of like economic violence where we realize that our power, our money's being usurped from us from the larger structure. I'm talking historically. And so this kind of gets embedded into the culture. So now you have people who need immediate gratification to sort of balance this out. So then they want to, guys want to drink, guys want to smoke weed. They don't want to focus in on school because they're being acculturated to have a lot of short-term thinking. When your refrigerator's empty and you got to worry about getting shot on the way to school, it makes it hard to really focus in on your education, right? And this, brings us to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A lot of people aren't getting their needs met to be self-actualized. So, like if a woman, if she knows that she's not self-actualized, and a lot of women know that, even if it's subconsciously, then they look for a mate, and they're looking for a guy, and they'll say, well, he's got a strong intellect. He's not broken like me. I don't think he can even understand me. And then when you feel like you're in this, when you're hyper vigilant, you're worried about threats in your environment, then you need protection. And you hear a lot of Black women talk about that. Like, it's kind of crazy how they always say, we need protection. We need protection. And I think really that's at the root of that, right? And then you start to hear about this house slave, field slave. I've heard Black women online talk about, well, I need a Black man who's a field slave. He fights white supremacy. He's wild. He might sell drugs. He might be in a gang, but he's not an assimilationist. And I think that speaks to wanting a man who's also broken, who's not a sapio, because she's not a sapiosexual. So then what that does is you got hip hop and pop culture starting to glorify this reptilian mindset. And now you have a lot of Black men who have strong intellects, but then they act like chameleons and they put on this mask and they kind of dumb themselves down. And even if it's not that, like I have people in my family who are well educated, but they say, I don't use big words around other Black people. And I don't like to seem too hoity toity because I don't want them to think that like, I think that I'm better than them. And I think like, this is really embedded in Black culture.
I have a question.
I think it's embedded in certain parts of Black culture, but I don't know if that's Black culture all the way around because, we do value education. And we're seeing more and more Black people getting educated. We do value it. I know the narrative is that we don't, but when we look at what the real deal is with respect to numbers, we were seeing a slightly different deal with that. We see that Black men are more in school and college than in prison, which was pushed a lot. So I think there's certain kind of narratives in the media that's pushed that may not really be entirely accurate. I mean, we certainly have our problems. We do know that there is a greater nexus between crime and education than crime and poverty. What am I saying? If you have a good school, that's kind of an oasis in the desert, and the kids can come in and get a good education and then move into a higher class, if you will, that person will tend to be less criminally motivated. All right. As opposed to one who is going to in a community and a person may be poor, but if that person is poor and goes to a terrible school and the school is the worst thing going and it's a reptilian school in so many ways with teachers sitting there and they don't give a damn about you, you got 28 people in the class and you got 5 or 6 books or something else like that, then we see those schools so bad, people then don't have a ray of hope and they become much more criminally minded. So I really think the key here that we continue to get that we can't get around is education. The better educated you are, the better it is. And women and I'm going to say this: women do tend to like men who are fairly decently educated. Well, they do. All right.
Well,
anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say I was just going to say that coming out of slavery, we were building institutions. I mean, we were inventing things, and 90% of the things that you see in your household came out of ex-slaves who invented things and designed things and created HBCUs and created education through the institutions of the church. So I'm wondering at what point, did we stop valuing all of these things?
Mike, you bring up such a critical point. I just wanted to say this. Like we were talking about our family history. We're talking about my great grandfather, great grandfather. He came out of the Civil War and everything else like that. Went to school, became a teacher, and what he had his Bible, and then next to his Bible he had something called the Blue Back Speller. You guys can look it up, and I actually looked it up on Amazon, and you can actually buy this thing for $17. Blue Back Speller. And the church at that stage of the game was a institution, not just for religion, but he said every black man, we didn't want black men coming up and signing their name in X's. We wanted them to be able to write, spell the name, and spell the name and spell everything out phonetically. And they used to talk about how he used to, really, drill people on their spelling. One of the favorite words that he wanted them to spell was Constantinople. Go ahead, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Presumably, everybody can correct me if I'm wrong. Presumably, everybody here, we're representing some facet of what we would say is the educate and a subset or whatever, the educated class of black men. And presumably, most of us here are saying that there's a problem. There is a gender relations problem. So what you're saying is that it's in our. What are you saying? That we don't know what we think, or we making it up, or it's been manufactured by media? What are you saying?
No. Let me finish. I was saying that really, we really put a lot of emphasis in education. What has happened, and when we start to look at our culture and society since that time, and we've had a lot of issues that have helped to erode our schools and really erode our institutions. We've seen some fallback. We've seen some fallback on this. We've come back around to where we're starting to get education again over the last 30 years, really, where we've actually been starting to turn things around where people haven't seen, where people don't really know what's going on. But yeah, there is a certain level of misinformation on us. I heard President Obama sit back and say, "Yo, man, there are more black men in jail than there are in school." And he was up there, on national TV saying, "Black president." He was wrong. He was dead wrong about that.
No, it was two white women from Boston College that actually broke him down on that. They actually provided all the statistics for.
Exactly. He was dead wrong on that shit. So is there some misinformation and there is and the narrative is a little screwed up? Yeah, I'm going to say that it is. I'm going to say that it definitely is. But yet I know here on YouTube, because there's a certain narrative that rolls on YouTube and in the black sector, and people have bought onto a lot of this crapola as well. And I'm here to say maybe we might, maybe you folks may need to get some facts, a little bit more facts going on, and let's take a look at what we really do.
So you're gaslighting us. You're gaslighting us. That's what you're doing.
I think he's. I don't know. I don't know what Dollar Will's talking about. Go ahead, Dollar Will. Explain yourself.
No, I think he's 100% correct, because when you look at the black male college graduation rates, they try to, the narrative that you would see on black YouTube is that black women have 1 million degrees and black men only have 100 degrees. And it's not really that. It's not really true. Right. It's like 28% to 25%. And if you compare like the African-American college graduation bachelor's degrees to the white graduation rates, maybe not rates, but the percentage that has bachelor's degrees is very similar. It's much more close than people think.
We're surpassing white men on this, and Jenks Morton sat back and broke this thing down didactically, and a lot of us, don't know, because we don't know the numbers. But I've watched him, and I've been watching him closely since 2006, and I know where we are. I know our high school dropout rate's not 50%; they're 8%. Right in line with where we have, right on line with a lot of these white folks in other communities. We're there. Where we find our biggest problems are opportunities when we come out of school, and that's because a lot of us are not creating jobs and creating better opportunities for ourselves. That's where we're having problems. Whites are hiring themselves. Whites are hiring, their people, and Latinos are doing very much the same who get up in there, and we're not doing that as much. So that's where we're finding somewhat of a problem. So that's why our employment rates are a little less, and we're having more economic issues. And, the black person who's gone to school, got the degree, and put all the right things together, that individual is more in debt and having a more difficult time financially than his white and Asian counterparts. and
So
that's
I'm not getting how to do
and that's some reality there. But we can get all I don't want to get too far off track, but I'm just saying that when we start to look at the facts, we start to look at some things that that certain narratives are not very accurate on, and they need to be challenged, and they need to be blasted every chance you get, quite frankly.
So Truth, what you're saying is that because of the economic plights of Black people, that's why you don't have more of women who are sapiosexuals? Is that what
I think economics is part of it, but then it's the culture that's just developed where, I mean, just from my experience, from what I've experienced and understand, that it's the culture itself warps people to where we don't want to nerd out, we don't want to nerd out like maybe we should or we could, or we don't value, we don't value that sapiosexual nature just because the culture doesn't. I mean, it's just not something that we highlight in ways that other demographics do. I mean, you got a Chinese culture that's been around for how many thousands of years, and so it's going to be it could be much more developed than ADOS culture in a lot of ways, just because just the timeline and what's happened. So I think economics is a huge piece, but I don't think that's the end all.
Yeah, they seem to promote it for Black females, right? So you have Black girls code, Black girl magic, Black girl this, Black girl that. But when it comes to Black males, it seems to be this perception of his masculinity can only be calcified in these sort of impoverished areas, which is why you talk. I think Dr. Phoenix talked about Jay Morrison, and you hear some of these other brothers, with this. I've been to jail, man, and the white man had me down, and no white man can ever hold me down, and that becomes the sort of selling point for masculinity, and intellectualism is being frowned upon, and it's like. In the Manosphere, you got people running around, cooking people, kidnapping people, all this crazy stuff that didn't make any sense to other communities. To our community, it's like, yeah, that's a real nigga. That's the real. He leaps from a building in a single bound, and he leaps out of the trap house in a single bound, and he can avoid cops, and it's unreal to some of the stuff that they measure Black men by, but for themselves. The more education a Black woman has and that she attains, somehow, some way, that's to be valued. But for Black men, that's not the same. That's if you have it, it's not of value to her.
Right. He leaps from the trap house.
Leaps from in a single bound. That's pretty. That's pretty slick.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I mean, yeah, super nigga.
Meanwhile, the brother who's making policy changes in law, changes in law and changes in policy on the job, that's your real person that's fighting racism, fighting the white man. But he don't get that status.
Well, if you call Richard and Milhouse Nixon the President Richard Nixon, then somehow you're showing reverence to this guy, and we can't respect that. Should be showing reverence to this white man.
Listen, a lot of these Negroes that get on YouTube and talk crazy, they finish. We know they highly finish, but when we start to talk some sense here, I think like we're talking here, we can kind of look and identify what some of our real issues are, and we do need a cultural. There has to be somewhat of a cultural change here, because we do have an issue with. Hey, if you're educated, you're supposed to be this, you're talking down to other people and all that. I've even heard that from the Black brain trust. Oh, y'all are just trying to sound smart, blah, blah, blah. I've heard a lot of.
We got called snobs. We got called snobs.
Yeah. Just dumb shit. Just dumb shit. So, we do have to turn the corner on. There is a cultural turning of the corner we have to do in some respects in our community.
Well, Kevin Samuels did something last year. The Suit Saturdays, brothers went at him. Over that.
For real?
Yeah, this was last year. I think BGS Black Gnostics had to put up a video defending Kevin Samuels. There's this sort of idea that wearing a suit and a tie makes you less of a man, right? You got guys running around with Dragon Ball Z jeans and snakeskin Jordans and Louis Vuitton belts, and but can't pay a $10 copay at the hospital in the emergency room. It's unbelievable, man.
It is, and I heard Kevin say what somebody actually told me. Hey, Kevin, man, you know, what you talking about suits? It's you know, you just a nigga in a suit, just a nigger in a suit. That's what some people are saying. That's why they don't. You're just a nigger in a suit. I mean, MOT, very true. You know of this as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. So
you know.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you get called a clown and everything else.
I have a question. So, this one thing have not been discussed, but I think we should discuss it. The people who are pro-black are so afraid of us being assimilated. Like, what does that mean? If they're afraid of assimilation, but it's okay to devolve in reptilian behavior. So, I'm not sure.
I would have answered. I would have spoke up to try to answer that until you polluted it with that last part.
Okay.
Now, if you want to ask me a question without taking that out, because I was just going to assume I'm gonna be the one. I don't have no problem representing, that sector to my review. But you could take that poisonous part out because why would we got
some.
I'm not embracing no idiots on no level. Okay, we got idiots across the spectrum of every whatever camp. My question is, why is it that everybody takes every lunatic and push them over into the pro-black camp, make that the trash can of the black community? Why do y'all do that, man?
Hold on a second. Dawul, I can answer that. A lot of those people go running over there. We know that the real people who really have truly pro-black thought understand where pro-black thinking really came from. Okay, understand it. And we're not talking about just the classical guys, that you hear, Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X, but they really understand pro-black movement, and there's a large intellectual sector about that. Yeah, that is a whole different game as compared to a lot of these charlatans who come over and call themselves pro-black, talking crazy, done killed folks, talking ill, running around, selling drugs and all this kind of stuff, and they say, well, come to the black community, and these are some of the people who've done the most damage, the worst, but yet they want to try to make other people feel guilty or feel ashamed because they didn't go to the penitentiary or they weren't locked down in some craziness, to sit down and say, well, I paid my dues in this society because you destroyed and hurt your own people, but yet they sit back here and want to claim to be the blackest thing in the room, and it's been hijacked. And I hold it against some of the black people in the pro-black movement who've let these charlatans come on over and hijack a lot of that. Okay, and hijack a lot of that crapola. Those people should not be accepted in. They should be called out for what they are and ostracized. And the pure pro-black thought and real Pan-Africanist thought, okay, has a very long, distinguished history.
Correct.
Okay, and it's not a reptilian thing, but the reptiles have come in.
Do you consider
the charlatans and the scam burglarizers
part of that?
And they've taken over. And not so much they've taken over. I think they have had a loud voice. They've done a lot of misrepresentation. They've been out there heavy, and these people should have been cut back to the fat meat.
Are you a part of that?
Not a lot of you guys haven't torn them out the frame like they needed to be. And that's really what I think. Anyway, go ahead.
Are you a part? Do you consider yourself a part of that, or in not that particular group, but I guess pro-black or conscious community circles that whether on YouTube or off? Do you consider yourself part of it?
Do I consider myself a part of what? Repeat that again. I'm
any
sorry,
kind of group or collective that you would consider pro-black or conscious community, whether on YouTube or not.
I consider myself, without question, how would I say, pro-black in the sense of I believe black people, from a political and economic standpoint, should put our interests first.
Okay, my question was not phrased correctly. The group that you were criticizing that harbors these folks with, these criminal behavior or whatever,
just call them the prison scholars. That's what they are.
Hold on. You should have respect for prison scholars. I mean, not the prison, but the scholar. I mean, what isn't that a great thing for a prisoner to become a scholar?
Well, the problem with that, man, is that you get these folks. They come out of prison after they done some of the the worst things possible in the black community, but then they come lecture like brothers like on the panel here about what being black is. You're not black if you don't meet these prerequisite standards. One, you ain't been out there slanging or trapping or whatever.
Okay.
Real
Two,
nigga
you ain't got a record.
But that's
Three, you ain't been to prison. And this goes.
But that's not all prisoners.
That's not all. But let's just keep it real here. Let's just keep this 100. Most of the vast majority of the brothers that end up in prison because they had discipline issues to begin with. Let's just stop playing this game. We want to act like a lot of these cats. A lot of these cats aren't just the dudes that you got caught slipping that day and you caught a case. Let's just keep it real.
I'm talking about the danger of taking this wide brush. See, hold on. We went from a wide brush about the conscious community now a wide brush about prison scholars. You guys got to cut that crap out.
Well,
brother, you didn't hear me earlier when I talked about
prison scholar.
You didn't hear me earlier.
I don't think that necessarily means that you had to have come from the penitentiary. I think it means more of like a sociopathy where you're taking pro-black thought and you're weaponizing that to line your own pockets and to warp people. I'm not sure that it really applies to people coming out of the prison.
That's exactly. Those guys have they've taken.
But that's what you see with.
Okay, let me go back to the question. Let me go back to the line of question, the inquiry I was having with Nagon, so we can get clear on that. About so the group, the conscious community that you're saying that they should speak up to, exercise the group of these charlatans.
And then they play.
My question is: do you consider yourself a part of any such conscious community, whether it exists?
No. I understand.
Okay, I got my answer. The answer is no.
Okay. I'm not going to say that.
Let me go on. So that question was predicated on something else. So if you're not a part of the group,
I'm not a conscious one of these conscious guys sitting around there. No,
I got it.
I'm black.
I got it. You answered it. I'm just going to go on. I got it. So how can you tell them how they should and should not behave? I mean,
it's very obvious.
What they're trying.
Not rocket science.
What they're trying
to interject here. I don't think that's what's happening. I think it's the other way around.
Can I finish a statement? What those guys are trying to do is engage people in the community who they disagree with. And so when you turn to one of those conscious, quote unquote, conscious community channels, and you see these people on there and you hear some crazy ideas, I hear those same crazy ideas. Don't make the assumption that they're all kumbaya. They are trying to argue out points instead of fighting about it on the street. They absolutely do not agree. And if you ask them individually, is that lunatic over there in the conscious community? He would say no.
Well, you have a lot of lunatics in the conscious community. I see them over there.
We got a lot of lunatics in the community.
I see them over there on 135th Street in Harlem. See them running around. I see a lot of them scamming. I see a lot of the bullshit going on. And I think there's been I think there's been a lot of hijacking going on, Dollar Will. Whether you agree with it or not, that's
I agree that there is.
There are many others who would definitely look at it and agree with what I'm saying. And I think the real pro-black, very conscious intellectual community has been undercut by some of these bitches, and y'all need to wax that ass. That's
look,
what
just
I'm saying.
even to add to
there needs to be a cleaning, an enema. All right, I'm sorry to put it on terms like that.
Yeah, look, just to add to what Nagon is saying, brother. I grew up in Chicago, man. It's the same damn thing. These dudes are all over these folks are all over the damn place. And so they're pushing out some of the most.
People shouldn't debate them to try to change them.
Brother, have you seen Black YouTube? Have you seen the crap over in the Black Manosphere? They're all over in the damn Black Manosphere.
Have you seen?
And they're sitting on panels calling brothers coons and every damn thing else. I mean, these are the same folks.
Is your point
they are one and the same? There's no differentiation here.
Are you saying that these brothers should not be engaged? People shouldn't debate them on the crazy stuff that they say.
First of all, if you walk in off back, straight denigrating a brother because you don't speak in the hood vernacular. You don't use the word nigga with the A, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, or what are you doing to say the community? Brother, that's just straight out back, you disrespectful to folks. But then these same people will sit here and tell brothers like me or any of the brothers on the panel how, oh, you're a coon because you refuse to do something for the community. Brother, you don't even know what the hell I do.
So again, my
I'm
question
not in the
again,
community
so
all the
those
damn
brothers
time.
should not be debated on their errors? Is that what you're saying?
It's
First of
difficult.
all, this becomes this. Let's just keep it 100 about the conscious community. The conscious community, for the most, it's not the same conscious community that brought you the Dr. Francis Cress Welsings or the Dr. John Henry Clarks or the Dr. Joseph Ben Yakinans. They didn't bring you those folks. These folks, when these folks were near their end of life, they were surrounded by conscious community people who call themselves conscious, but these folks were the biggest damn scammers.
Listen, in them early 80s, in the heyday of all that stuff, or at least a huge reawakening of it in the early 80s, I was there, saw all of that. Yes, those charlatans were there even then. The only thing that's different now, I tell you what back then, you didn't go to conferences and necessarily see a hodgepodge or some fakers on stage with the real scholars, okay? Because the real scholars, like you mentioned, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Wayne, what's the brother name? Dr. Jeffrey.
Did you know Tariq Nasheed paid her funeral when she died?
He would have broke out the flamethrower on them
Jeffrey,
Negroes.
the brother.
He would have broke out the flamethrower on them Negroes, and they would have been poof.
The brother from Temple. The point is,
they'd have been burnt to dust.
They knew. They knew who
like a mummy hit the air for the first time in 5,000 years.
They knew who was real, and they didn't allow. They wouldn't show up on panels if fakers was there. The only difference now is everybody's got a microphone on YouTube. Back in the day, you couldn't even get on. The forum was, if you got a spot on a public radio station, airways, that was what you fought for, okay? Or you would go to a convention and get on the stage. But the real university scholars would keep those fakers out. Social media came along and everybody's got a microphone. So if you 30 years old or 35 or something, you think all of that's the conscious community. Somebody's in their 50s.
Brother, I think you're missing the point here, brother.
Huh?
I think you're missing the point here, brother. What I'm getting at, and I believe what the brother Nagone is getting at, is that, yeah, that may have been true 20, 30 years ago, but for millennials, what we see out here, what I have to experience out here, being in the healthcare sector, I'm telling you, brother, it ain't nothing but a bunch of frauds out here, and they have the biggest microphone. They have thousands upon thousands of followers, and they're the ones out here propagating a lot of this chicanery and buffoonery you see out here. Okay,
correct. So
they're the ones going. They're the ones
too much of it. Too much of it.
So
look, let's just some of the most well-known names, and somebody put up one of the dude's names in the chat right now. This dude got caught up. This dude got caught on Instagram putting up photos of something he was doing. He was allegedly doing at a construction site. Everybody called him out on it. No. This is what happens.
Is that the proper?
Nobody don't talk about how Francis Cress Welsing. You do know that Tariq Nasheed paid for her funeral when she died a few years ago.
Of course.
When Dr. Joseph Ben Yakinan died, he died poor, broke in a nursing home.
What's your point?
Because again, if these folks were as committed to these intellectuals, to the true intellectuals that they claim that they are, these folks would have never died in a destitute manner that they did. So and these folks use the work and these people's names in vain to justify why you got so many screw ups and why you continue to see a lack of competent black people in the 21st century.
So your criticism that these righteous scholars who died broken penniless, your criticism is that they didn't pimp the people like a Baptist preacher, or not just Baptist, like a Christian preacher. Is that your criticism?
Brother, do you see the white supremacist garbage that Pat Robertson spews out on the 700 Club? Billy Graham and his father?
Make the connection for me. How that relates to what we're saying.
The point is that simply, if these folks truly believed in what they talk about, it would be represented in these communities. If people believed in a lot of stuff I hear about on my own lectures. I hear folks come to me all the time, talk about some Dr. Sebi stuff. I'm not gonna stake my damn license on that. You can't even prove it. But they want you to talk about a whole bunch of abstract and tangible stuff that no one can prove. Why? Just to make people feel good. We know this happens. We know that these folks, and if you don't do that, you a sellout. Oh, you invested in the white man's economy. You invested in capitalism. You know the dollar's a fiat.
Now
we hear this crap all the time, and you got folks. I've literally been in meetings where I got brothers. I got these so-called conscious brothers over here running around talking about how broccoli is man-made.
So
this is why I got folks telling me, man.
So when you hear that kind of idiot speak, so everybody else is supposed to be the keepers of these folks. Nobody projects on you about quackery in the medical field and say you're responsible for stopping them. That's an unfair expectation. Actually,
that's exactly what happens.
It's not right, but those people are still out
That's exactly what happens, brother. You cannot fathom how many MDs and RNs I know, brother, that won't even bother to go. They're black and they won't even bother to go into the community because they know what's gonna happen. And they even ask me, why do I do it? And I do it for free. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was a Howard trained physician. She was a psychiatrist by trade.
Yeah, I know that. I went to Howard. I know.
But what happened to her at Howard? You know, Howard was one of the major breeding grounds for a lot of these conscious folks. What happened to her at Howard when she came out? When she really started to talk about white supremacy? When she gave us the term white supremacy?
So that is the mark that the conscious community is responsible for. Is that your argument?
No, my whole gripe is that there's a number of